All right, how's it going, everybody? My name's Antonio, the internet's very own aspiring grill master with the hair color to match. And I have another brief 3 hour long CEO barbecue update this week. And there's actually 5 companies this week. Focus on Canada. 3 of those companies are in BC. 2 of those are in the Golden Triangle. There's also 2 very early stage exploration stories that you've likely never heard about. We're doing a uranium company in the Athabasca Basin, which with a bunch of projects. We're getting an update on that. And one of those companies that you've likely never heard about has its projects in Eastern Europe, in Bosnia, on the Tethyan Belt. That's what Rick Roll always talks about, the Tethyan Belt. So it's that's going to be an interesting conversation. Close to Adriatic Metals, not Adriatic Metals, unfortunately. It's a very small company that you probably haven't heard about. And it's been a while since I sat down with Paul. I should try again. It's a good note. I'll make a note. So, but I'll cut the cackle here because this is going to be long, lengthy as always. Before that, though, as always, just please remember, these are what I just said. They're just going to be conversations, right? So, fair disclaimer, non is confession. First of all, I have no idea what I'm doing. You can see that by looking at my returns, although you probably wouldn't want to see that, but it's the lack of my return. So please don't take anything I do or say or the guests say in here personally. We're not talking to you. And the fact that I'm talking to these people doesn't really mean much. It doesn't mean I'm buying their stock. It doesn't mean I love or hate them, although I think they're all nice guys. But it by far doesn't mean that you should blindly buy anything off a YouTube video, of course, right? These conversations cannot be, should not be, will not be, would not be treated as independent research or research of any type. Just look at them as what they are. They're conversations, they're impersonal, they're general, and they're between 2 talking heads on the internet. So if you don't like losing money, you should go to setterplus.ca, where you're going to find the company's official filings, analyze them, rate them, talk to your dog about them. Just make sure to figure out what's happening in those companies on your own, and then talk to a professional investment advisor before taking your own decision. In the end, because the mineral exploration, development, and mining industry is among the hardest industries to profitably deploy capital in. There are many risks not visible to the naked eye. And you will lose all of your money if you don't do enough research and if you don't know what you're doing. In addition, some of the companies that you're going to hear on here are going to be paying clients. They pay for the production of these interviews, the edits, the preparation, all that you see. That's what they're paying for. Specifically, Skyharbour has paid for the production of its own interview, and Thesis Gold has also paid for the production of its own interview. And although I never send in questions up front and companies don't have editing rights over these videos, that still doesn't mean that you should think of this as independent research. And on top of that, there's a bunch of geologists that I'm talking here to today. Those are literally people who go around the world searching for treasures. So they are going to be speaking in a forward-looking manner. And these conversations are going to include forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. So do be aware of that. There's 2 disclaimers on your screen, being on your screen, whatever. Pause it, read it. That all said, we're starting off in Europe this week, Eastern Europe, and specifically on the western end of the Tethyan Belt, so that'd be Serbia and Bosnia, where we're looking for large-scale polymetallic deposits. And I'm talking to Dr. Alex Mishkovich, who's the CEO of Terra Balcanica. Companies listed on the CSE under the ticker symbol TERA with 1 R, so that'd be TERA, where an average of about 100,000 shares trade each day, with a 52-week high of 12.5 cents and a 52-week low of about 2 cents. With a market cap of just around 2.5 million Canadian dollars and about 100 million shares outstanding today, this is, well, 2.5-cent stock. There are roughly 20 million warrants and about 6 million options, leaving the number of fully diluted shares at 126 million. This is obviously an early stage exploration company with a very low market cap, so it is to be expected that the insider ownership is rather high, and Terra is no difference here. There's 45% of the company is being held by insiders. As of the last financial statement, which is dated October 31st, the company had about 100 grand in current assets, mostly in the form of prepaid expenses and some cash, as well as some account receivables. There is, of course, no long-term debt or anything like that on the balance sheet. As always, though, you're going to want to go to setterplus.ca yourself to see the most up-to-date financial data, because after the statement was published, Terra Balcanica has been raising some capital, issuing about 5.5 million shares at about 4 cents. Of course, keeping the lights on also costs money, and over the last reported 9 months, TERA has been doing an average of about $55,000 to $60,000 a month of G&A, marketing, paychecks, and so on and so forth. Boring stuff to the side, though. As I said at the beginning, the company operates in 2 countries in Eastern Europe. The flagship asset is called the Vjogorzanik asset. It's in Bosnia, and it covers 216 square kilometers of land. It's actually close to the Serbian border, so that'd be eastern Bosnia, close to the city, or well, east of the city of Srebrenica, and also centered around an existing mine that hosts a large lead, zinc, and silver deposit. TERA holds a 90% interest in this project. It's a shallow, high-grade epithermal vein-hosted polymetallic target. So we're talking multiple metals, lead, zinc, silver, gold in there. And it is, geologically, it's actually similar to the Andean silver tin belt, which extends from, I believe, Venezuela to Chile and Argentina. And it hosts some of the largest known open-pit silver, lead, and zinc mines in the world. You think, for example, of San Cristobal, which is in Bolivia, or Rich Hill, which my Spanish friends would call Cerro Rico, another rather famous mine in Bolivia. Broadly speaking, mineralization here occurs in veins, again, which is they are associated with tectonic activity and volcanic processes. And why I'm telling you all of this is because the Serbo-Macedonian metallogenic province on which TERA's land package is located is also hosted in volcanic rocks, and specifically subvolcanic rocks, actually, which in simple terms, it just means volcanic activity. Although this is a much younger belt, by the way, than the Andean belt, as it's believed to be about 30 million years old, which in geological times is actually not that old, and it's probably about the length of this current bear market in mining stocks, or at least that's how it feels. TERA's been working on this project since 2021, and the maiden drill program took place almost 2 years ago now in 2022. Which is also when they made the discovery of this fold-hosted polymetallic epithermal system, again, of massive sulfides at the Chumovici target, which was then followed up with the Phase 2 drill program last year, with the final assay results being released last week, showing the continuation of the Chumovici system with there's some highlights in there. Grades as high as 550 grams per ton of silver equivalent. Again, this is polymetallic, so we're talking in equivalent grades here. And that was over about 5 meters, so sort of narrow veins, high grade. And that was pretty much at surface too, so it started at 11 meters deep. And at today's silver prices, although I know I'm not supposed to think about it that way, this is first of all, this is an almost $400 rock that we're talking about here. But if I were to equate it to gold, which I probably shouldn't do, that'd be about 6 grams of gold. Again, this target is early days, and it's also just one of 6 target zones across what the company describes as an over 7-kilometer long corridor of this vein-hosted epithermal mineralization. Some of these other targets will hopefully, of course, financing dependent, will see some drilling in 2024 as well. So that's just one target. That's the main focus for the company too. But then 12 kilometers to the southeast from this target, Terra Balcanica discovered a gold skarn on the surface at its second target. It's called the Breznik target, it was relatively low grade, about 0.6 grams per ton of gold equivalent, and it extended to a depth of about 90 meters. But assay results are still pending on 4 shallow holes here. Different target, different thesis too, by the way. And this I actually classify maybe more of a high risk target, because TERA is looking for a gold porphyry here, which has not yet happened in this part of the Tethyan belt. And if it did, it would probably also not be as shallow. So this is only the skarn that they drilled in. So I'm assuming sort of below 500 meters deep. But again, more on that in the next news release, which the company says will come soon. I also have a feeling that I'm talking too much, as I most of the time am, and I won't cover the Serbian project in depth here. But they're there. They haven't been drilled yet, but there is some historical work on them. And again, contingent upon financing, the company hopes to sink some holes in them later this year. But you can read more about them on TERA's website, which, by the way, quite a lot of information. Company has plenty of geologists on the team, so you can expect there's quite a lot of good information on there. So definitely check that out. And then, although nothing official yet, the company's also after a lithium property in Bosnia. But I suppose, again, more about that during the conversation here. And Alex, all of this sounds promising, right? As it oftentimes is in company presentations, but all of it is also dependent on a bunch of things, among which financing. And I know that's not the most fun spot to start a conversation at, but talk to me about that. How do you and the team think about financing the 2024 drill program, given the state of the market and just the state of your stock too?
Right. Well, first, Antonio, thank you so much for having me on. Also, greetings to all your followers and subscribers and people who are going to be watching this video. Uh, this was an amazing summary. Actually, I've never heard of anybody so technically and in detail describe within 5 minutes of what Terra is all about. Yes, it's been very challenging. Well, actually, basically ever since we listed. I hear sometimes jokingly people say, "Why did you ever list in such a time?" As if we had any option or choice. It was a natural progression of our company. We existed as a private entity from technically September of 2020 until June of 2022, so almost 2 years. Did amazing amount of work during that initial stage. Targeted extensively over Gorzanik, but also did work in Kaludra and Selvište in Serbia. I mean, did something that very few private entities do at such an early stage. I mean, flown almost 1,500 line kilometers of airborne geophysics, you know, 3,500 soil samples, stream sediment sampling, remote sensing, hyperspectral, multispectral targeting, and of course, good old boots on the ground. You know, with sometimes up to 5 geologists and 5 geotechnicians walking all of these 216 square kilometers of land around Srebrenica to define these three targets. I think it was a very meticulous, scientifically led or scientifically based layer by layer approach, which then defined these three targets. And I think that the drilling in the last 2 years has confirmed the validity of that approach. Financing wise, obviously, I mean, when you look back at the history of Terra, $6.65 million have been raised since September of 2020, which is, no small feat considering the macroeconomic circumstances that we operate in. And yes, since becoming public, we've which was in June of 2020, we started drilling in January of 2022. Listed in June of 2022 as well. So about almost year and 8 months now as a public company. We had two financings, actually three, I should say, and unfortunately, every single one, of course, was down round relative to the previous one. But again, that's a reflection of the macroeconomic situation, overall state that the sector is in. I must say, on a positive side, I guess I can say that we've been able to raise money. I know a lot of companies that haven't been, and in a fairly short order. The sort of a bridge financing that took place in December of 2022 raised about $500,000. Again, I must emphasize that management and the insiders and the board stepped in every single time and put their money where their mouth is and support this project because they believe in the intrinsic value of the asset we have in Bosnia and Serbia, as well as the prowess of the technical team that carries out the work. The financing last year at 8.5 cents, which started sometime in April, lasted until September, indeed was prolonged longer than I expected. But again, that was the reflection of the turmoil that we all faced last year and how uncertain everything was. But I must say that in the end, $1.2 million had been raised, new investors brought in, and of course, under the promise of drilling phase 2, which is exactly what we've done. The ratio of money spent into the ground versus that of G&A is about 78 to 22. So we put most of our money into the ground, and we know that's exactly what investors want and what they appreciate. Of course, initially, before becoming public, we were putting that money into targeting. Since becoming public and defining the targets, most of it goes into drilling. The drilling expense in Bosnia is about $295 Canadian per meter, all inclusive. Serbia is more or less the same, so fairly cheap relative to the North American standards. You can get quite a lot done, for $300. That includes obviously the lab assays. So yeah, we were in a position basically last year after finishing the phase 2 drilling program to start issuing press releases. We couldn't obviously wait any longer, even though from the kind of capital market standpoint, the timing perhaps wasn't right. But there was nothing to wait for any longer. We started issuing them. Got relatively, I mean, from a technical standpoint, I get tap on the shoulder all the time. People compliment us and say, "Yeah, excellent. You guys are extending Trumavici, the average grade about 500 grams per ton silver equivalent. Thickness is actually this year around reported slightly lower than the last year, but again, that's because we went to the southeast, towards the northwest, I think, and down dip towards the southwest. I think thicknesses are probably on average between 7 and 10 meters in Trumavici. So we're talking a fairly simple geometry, fault hosted 45-degree dipping system towards the south west with an average thickness, as I say, between 5 and 10 meters. And we hope that those continue and become even thicker as we progress towards Northwest in 2024, our expected phase three program. We have raised 216, I believe, $1,000 in the last financing. And again, that's going to be basically kept, used to keep the, as mentioned, keep the lights on. We have, minimized our burn rates monthly to a bare minimum while maintaining our operational capability in Bosnia and Serbia. Obviously, we don't want to rip and strip everything away. We want to maintain our base camp and our core team while working on the press releases and working on basically getting the share price up. Right now, we are at the very affordable levels. I mean, I'm saying that in a polite way, obviously, the lowest that we have been. And the management is fully aware of that, and we are looking to turn that around. There's a couple of ways to do so. We can, obviously, you mentioned the lithium asset, which we have been working on and preparing for the last year, I would say, in Bosnia. We still have about half a dozen of news releases to issue. So the news stream certainly isn't over. We're going to be strategically looking into how to do so over the course of the next 2 or 3 months. While we obviously, trying to get this share price at the level which, isn't going to be as dilutive as it is now if we were to go and tap into the capital markets right now, which we could. I mean, we could raise money at 3 cents or 4 cents, but that's not what we as a company want to do. And I don't think it's respectful towards our shareholders who've been supporting and following the story for the last 3 years. So obviously the capital markets ecosystem has to be made in a way that to support what I believe are, fairly good silver intercepts. And that's not even mentioning the Brezheny target, 13 kilometers southeast of Trumavici, which I call a multi-domain, polydomain, gold skarn intermediate sulfidation system, and then the porphyry underneath, all of which have been intercepted, and more about that in the upcoming news releases. But, and of course, not to mention even Serbia. So much to do, so much potential. Indeed, an early stage game, but at the same time, with I would say both Brezheny and Trumavici being de-risked from the standpoint of these are not anymore, to my satisfaction as a geologist, these are not anymore pretty cross sections of geophysical maps with heat maps and pink and purple and blue and gray. These now, especially when it comes to Trumavici, to my satisfaction and content, have been confirmed. So our geophysical and geochemical stories really do hang together. And I'm happy for that. We can use our geophysical models and 3D models to actually target further, especially in Brezheny. As I say, Trumavici is more or less, flat board kind of a story. There's not much really to think about it, but in Brezheny, we can use that to our advantage to target further in the future. And yes, obviously looking to finance at some point in the future over the course of the next 2 or 3 months so that we can finance the phase three, but certainly not at the levels of 2.5, 3.5, or 4 cents. One way or the other, Terra is going to be looking to do that. Now, dare I say, at the levels of last year, it's difficult to say. Can we go back to 8.5 given the circumstances? We probably could. Obviously, this is going to have to be done in a concert with the press releases that are about to come out. And obviously, as I mentioned, that ecosystem of support that that needs to be there. It is tough for everybody out there. I mean, I look at other companies who have lost 80, 100, 150% of their value since summer of 2022. And but at the same time, I don't want to be looking at other folks and finding myself an excuse. We need to look at Terra and why is it that we came there in the first place, which was a promise, as I mentioned, of porphyry deposits in Bosnia, so far unheard of. Following up on a success of Tethyan resources. Sorry, I should say Adriatic metals
Hmm.
in Bosnia, a success story that if we only imagine ourselves being half of that, we would be very extremely happy.
Hmm.
But also, entering the region and the country and jurisdiction that so far hasn't really seen or very little of modern day exploration. In addition to Lycos Resources, another small microcap from Australia and the Adriatic, we are the only third company operating in Bosnia. Serbia has slightly more, but still, fairly underexplored and per square kilometer, I would dare to say, very rich part of the world.
Hmm. There are looking at the map of where you're at in Bosnia, sort of east from Adriatic's claims
Hmm.
there. What Rio Tinto is to the north of you, which is technically across the border, so it is in
Yep.
Serbia.
Yeah.
But would it be possible to sort of bring an asset level strategic partner in the face of one of the large mining companies? Zijing, I think Dundee operate also in that part of the world as well. Like, would it be
Yeah.
possible to bring some of them, one of them in for JV or something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Especially when it comes to, let's say, Brezhnev target. I mean, to be completely frank, the reason why we were at Brezhnev and the reason why we were at Via Gorzanik in the first place was actually to chase and see if this intrusive system, or I should say volcanoplutonic system, so it contains both volcanic rocks and shallow hyperbyssal intrusive rocks, could feature a porphyry copper deposit underneath. I mean, it's not unheard of because just in the neighboring Serbia, as you go towards the southeast, towards Kosovo, the administrative line, and then further into North Macedonia and Greece, of course, you do have porphyry copper deposits of this Neogene age, oligomycene 20 to 35 million years old.
Yeah.
Um, and Brezhnev, I think, is exactly that. It's a target that we have confirmed the porphyry mineralization, albeit fairly deep, between 550 and 674 meters of depth. Um, so to actually explore this further, I think we would be well advised to find that exactly a strategic partner who can finance these deep holes because they're not cheap. And then, very few times do you get a porphyry discovery in the first hit on the first hole. So, to target and to explore this further is obviously our goal. And for that, we will and have been looking for partners from the region or internationally who could step in and support that financial muscle to explore the Brezhnev target to its full extent. And I believe there's so much to find there. Chumovici is a different story. We can pretty much do this on our own. The target is shallow, very shallow, between 10 and 60, 80, 70 meters. Fairly simple geometry, as I said. We can carry on and truck away and further expand the resource or the target at Chumovici Ridge, which is our primary part of the story, but also in Yosheva and Chumurnica and Seoce and these other targets along this 7.2 kilometer corridor. When you look at our corporate presentation, and if you go to the slide on Chumovici and all those little yellow spaghetti, these are actually resource blocks from the Yugoslav work done in 1979,
Hmm.
1982. So the Yugoslav have defined, according to the sort of like Yugoslav/Russian resource models, about 2.1 million tons of resource. Again, this is something we cannot report according to the JORC or 43101 rules, but it certainly is a part of the Yugoslav archival record. We have come across those reports, and it was never really followed up and further explored by them. So this is where we step in, and they never really asked it for silver either. They never bothered with gold and silver. They would just look at lead and zinc, and then stepped away. So when you look at that as a sort of a guide, and then see what we have done just at Chumovici Ridge, stands to reason that there's so much more to unearth and uncover within the entire 7.2 kilometer corridor. And again, as I said, we can probably do this on our own. Brezhnev would require, well, we can, shallow skarn, which is, as you mentioned, 0.61 gram per ton gold equivalent over about 90 meters depth starting from surface, is very exciting. That's also not too deep of a target. We can explore the full extent of it in the X and Y direction, and obviously in the Z direction as well. But what was really exciting and is that this intercept, unexpected intercept of what seems to be again fault hosted intermediate sulfidation system that we have now intercepted at about 500 meters depth or so. We'll be obviously talking about it in the upcoming press releases. That itself could also be explored by Terra, but anything deeper than that, and if you're talking 3, 4, 5, 6 drill holes, those things would probably best be done in some sort of a JV partnership. We have been in negotiations with the companies operating locally, whether they're in Serbia or Turkey, and we have signed a few NDAs, of course, with some of the world's best and biggest names. And I think at this point they're probably looking at us. They're looking at us to see what is it that we're gonna be able to do ourselves before somebody of them steps in. It's always nice to know that you're being watched by the likes of Rio Tinto and Tech and whatnot. Obviously, it's up to us to make that discovery or something as interesting that would make them come in and support us. You mentioned Serbia as well, Antonio, which is obviously something we don't focus much because Via Gorzanik, the flagship project in Bosnia, is usually the one that soaks up most of the attention. But that's something that, for example, if I had a to-do list for 2024, something that I would probably tap immediately. I mean, we are talking extremely high grades of silver and gold, very close to the surface. So think of Trumavici, but think of it being gold and silver dominated, especially gold dominated. So these are quartz arsenopyrite veins, unlike Trumavici, which is only a one single fault. There in Ceroviste, it seems to be a stacked system, which is excellent, and also shallow, close to surface. So, for example, I would love to be able to go immediately there. I think Serbian part of the portfolio deserves our attention at this point, having focused on Bosnia for the last 2 years. Obviously, we want to carry Bosnia too. But again, this is, I guess, beauty of Terra. We have polymetallic, multi-jurisdictional portfolio of assets that it's almost like, for possible partners, either JV or option agreements or whatnot, perfect for them to cherry pick what is it that they want. If they want, more of a polymetallic story close to surface than Trumavici, if they want more of a gold story, then we can go to Raška in Serbia. Should they want to investigate and see how well we do with our hypothesis of discovering a porphyry copper deposit in Srebrenica, then maybe Brezhnev is their target. So a lot to choose from, and this was sort of a model of ours from the beginning. Now, why is it that we are polymetallic in the Balkans? It's not really because we want it to be that. It's just what the nature gives us. In the Balkans, you usually get a mixture of all of these things together. I mean, if you look at the Adriatic story, they have everything we have in Trumavici plus copper on top. And yet the recoveries are 90%. So, I'm not too concerned about metallurgy. Obviously, they're going to divide their concentrate stream into the more precious metal versus base metal one, but still recoveries are amazing. And obviously, we haven't done any metallurgical work, but we're using them as a proxy for our press releases. So things are boding well. From a technical standpoint, I think we have so much to look forward to, so much more to do, despite a mountain of work done in the last 3 years, because I also want to remind your viewers that we have started literally from nothing. I mean, this was a pure greenfield exploration, discovery, obviously some historical work done by the Yugoslavs in one of these targets, but the rest of it was pure blood targeting, as pure as it gets, in a region that obviously had historical perspective and promise, but there was nothing defined largely by anybody else in the region in these particular licenses, apart from us doing it in the last 3 years.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of birch trees there? Is that where you called it Breznik?
So Brezhani is the target. And yeah, we do have lots of birch and beech trees. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Bosnia
Yeah,
and Serbia are full of this. Yeah.
Yeah, they are, but majority of the Balkans is.
Yeah.
It's true. You have what I was thinking about when I mentioned the strategic. I was also thinking about this is a smaller company operating, as I mentioned, a mining company. It's a private an English company operating it. Actually, pretty much in the middle of Trumavici, if you will, sort of
True.
like it's surrounded. Wouldn't it make sense for them to buy? They have like what 4 to 5 years of mine life left. Wouldn't it make sense for them to come in some type of way?
Excellent point. I mean, that's a perfect point, and that's something that sometimes I actually get criticized for not bringing to the attention of the viewers and people that I present to as frequently as I should. Yes, like right smack in the middle. Again, not because we wanted it that way; it just happened. Right in the middle of our Via Gorzanik project, which consists of 3 licenses, we have an operating mine that produces 330 to 350,000 tons of lead, zinc, silver, antimony, gold concentrate. Yes, they're private. called Mineco Ltd, based in London, obviously with regional offices in Belgrade and Bosnia. They operate 4 mines in Serbia and 2 mines in Bosnia. So, it looks like, it's not a mystery that their modus operandi or business model is obviously was to, go after these older Yugoslav mines, put them into production and move forward. And that's exactly what they're doing. The latest numbers that we were able to get or find out or understand are from 2016, and they speak of about, still about 5 to 6 million tons left in that deposit, depending on how quickly they excavate and exploit that resource. Obviously, it is going to depend on, well, the mine life will depend on the rate of mining. But if we take the current rate of exploration, mining, that and 350,000 tons is only the concentrate. Obviously, that's not ore. I would probably calculate another 5 to 6, maybe 7 years of mine life left. So it would make complete sense and stand to reason to think that they would and should be looking at Čumavići and what is it that we did there as a way to extend their mine life. Because again, the system that we have in Čumavići is more or less the same as in the Sase mine, except that it has slightly more silver and slightly base metal ore. So it's more silver, less lead and zinc. Antimony is just as high, if not even higher, but that's exactly what I would, think that they should be doing. And so far, we are good corporate neighbors with them. I would also probably say that there, but not huge interactions so far between us. We did host a couple of town hall meetings in Srebrenica. Their geologists would come over and talk 2 hours and look at the maps. Everything was nice and cordial. You never know. I mean, I would love to establish, connection. I think ultimately it's going to depend on what their future strategy is for the region and for that particular mine, and what is it that we or how much tonnage we happen to define in the Čumavići overall, not just in Čumavići Ridge, but in all the other targets. Again, they have, to my understanding, a flotation and crushing circuit on site. So again, the processing facilities are there, the infrastructure is there, and ultimately there's 7 kilometers from their mine to the Čumavići as the crow flies. Of course, the beauty of working in Europe and from Yugoslavia, Bosnia is that there's paved roads everywhere. Infrastructure is fully developed. So, and there's a main road that goes right smack through the middle of Čumavići, all that basically kind of going along that corridor from northwest to southeast. So it wouldn't be a huge trouble to initiate an open pit at Čumavići Ridge or whatever other mining operation and haul the ore to the processing facility in the Sase mine.
How many years away do you think you are from coming up with an internal scoping study or an MRE?
Yeah. If we go hard at Čumavići this year and next year, I think we will probably be in a position to issue a preliminary mineral resource by the end of 2025. Having said that, it all depends what is it that we find in this, after drilling this year in Brezheny as well. I mean, Brezheny could take the spotlight in terms of our priorities, because again, I like that combination of porphyry underneath, epithermal core in the middle, and then skarn on top. It's almost like you can explore all three with a single hole. So, and also how interesting the drilling results are in Serbia, which I think, again, as I mentioned, should be something that we certainly go and investigate right away. And it wouldn't take long, 1,000, or it wouldn't take much, 1,000 to 1,200 meters of drilling in SYH that would certainly prove the concept in that particular hotspot called Međurečje, to see how extensive in the X direction those stacked epithermal veins are, how many of them are there, and how many we can investigate, and of course what the grades and continuity is. So again, Čumavići being the simplest of these things would now probably be the best candidate for the preliminary mineral resource. It's difficult to say, of course. Everything is also dependent on the macroeconomic situation and the amount of funding that we're able to raise. But I mean, assuming that that's not an issue, assuming that we manage to keep on coming with really good results and get that confirmation that technically this is a sound thing, and if there is a change in sentiment and the tide turns, then I don't think moving ahead with Čumavići will be too much of a problem, because it's shallow and high grade system. So 2025, I would say Brezhny. We don't know Chumalichi. Obviously, we haven't. Oh, sorry, the Serbian Selvish asset we haven't even drilled yet. So it's early days there. But optimistically, I would say that 2025 or the end of would be a goal for me to define something in Chumalichi. Obviously, for that we would need significantly more drilling. I'd probably say between 4 and 5 kilometers of drilling, probably even more this year at least, and then following up next year as well, just to define that along strike continuity, because that's the key right now.
Hmm.
How expensive in the northwest southeast direction does that plane continue?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me, and then oftentimes geologists will tell me that they are not after, they're not trying to make a discovery in the first hole. They're actually trying to kill targets. So with
Yeah.
Bresnik, you would basically, you'd have to sink what a 1,000 meter, an 800-meter hole, to see if you can hit that thesis of hitting those 3 points at the same time. And if you don't hit it, then that target is dead basically, and you can do it in one hole.
Well, the beauty of Brezhnev is the fact that it's again, there's a architecture in terms of depth from top to bottom, and you're right. I mean, to kind of go and confirm mineralization in a porphyry system, which we have intercepted, and or see what place is the best, what carries the best grade. You probably need a couple of more holes, certainly deep ones.
Mm.
If that doesn't pan out, we can always focus on things that are shallower. But on the way down, we will obviously probe everything that's shallower than that porphyry system. So that's kind of a nice thing. I'm not going to be saying too much right now because the press releases are not out. But again, we have come across a relatively surprising, positively surprising situation in Brezhny on our way down towards the porphyry, where this, again, unexpected to us intermediate sulfidation system has been intercepted as well, which then will provide, obvious targets for going forward. And not only just the superficial skarn, but also the stuff underneath. Again, we obviously looking for partners, strategic partners who appreciate the beauty of this system. I mean, I guess the footprint is huge. It's 1.2 kilometers in all directions. So we're talking a massive system that's seen a lot of alteration and hydrothermal activity over the last 25 million, 30 million years. But even if you don't find those partners, I mean, Brezhnev for me is a top-notch target that's going to have to be investigated further no matter what.
Right. How are you thinking in terms of chronology? When do you start drilling? Do you
Yeah.
drill Brezhnev first and then go on to Chumovic? How do you see that?
Again, it's difficult to say right now. I mean, but I would like to start May at the latest. I depending on the availability of funds. Again, let's not forget that Selvish the target. I mean, if the gold remains high and in vogue, like we hope it does, and above $2,000 or even more dollars US per ounce, then hitting some high grade gold targets in Selvish there, where I myself have personally assayed or collected a sample of 64 grams per ton gold, not gold equivalent, just pure gold,
Mm.
on surface.
Mm.
Then I moved 30 meters down the road and I collected 53 grams per ton gold on surface in what was obviously a very oxidized, gossamerous, yucky looking rock. I knew it was going to carry grade. I just didn't realize it was going to be 2 ounces of it.
Mm.
And then obviously then we have some historical records that speak of the French working in the area in 1939 and digging these underground cavities, adits, and things they have intercepted. So when you put all of that together, it represents a beautiful, shallow, easy to drill, infrastructurally super easy target because the roads are right there. We can put platforms right one by the other and just skewer this thing and see what happens. So, with not much resources, with not much money, we could, de-risk and immediately put some press releases, some really glaring press releases when it comes to Serbia, Terra's portfolio in Serbia. Apart from that, obviously going back at Brezhnev, I would say so, extending Chumalichi towards the northwest. So if people have paid attention to our presentation, they'll realize that the Chumalichi Ridge story, the focus of our Chumalichi exploration has been kind of in last year in 2023, phase two drilling looked at from the standpoint of us actually stepping out in a massive way towards the northwest, intercepting some holes right there. And now we have this kind of a gap or a space to close in between the focal point of 2022 and the 2023 drilling. And that's, for example, what we would like to do in Chumavici. So kind of carry on, truck along with prudent, diligent, but not sheepish step outs, 25 to 50 meters towards the northwest, and try to intercept more of this thicker part of the vein, higher grades as well, in Chumavici with shallow and cheap holes. So, I guess my answer is like all over the place is what I would like to do. Obviously, depending on the funds, I'm going to have to prioritize. But again, I guess the beauty of our portfolio is that optionality. We can turn to whatever we think is going to give us the best bang for the buck, depending on what the markets are currently valuing and what is it that we can do. Our relationships with the drillers in Bosnia are long-standing. Again, as I mentioned, drilling is and the cost, including assaying in lab, is very cheap, fairly cheap. So we can do a lot with not too much of cash. And they would be ready to start deploying their team, as soon as May. I say May to be realistic because, given where we are right now, it's already mid February. By the time we, get this share price to where it needs to be, in my mind, and then raise money at those levels, it's going to take time. It's going to take 2 months or so, and I don't want to be telling people we'll be drilling in April like we did last year. I mean, we kind of hurled ourselves into the drilling right away as soon as we raised even a little bit of cash. In 2022, the phase one drilling started on the 17th of January with minus 17 degrees Celsius temperatures out there. So we are not shy to start early, and you can drill in the Balkans year round. But this time, I think we ought to plan this properly, define the priority of targets depending on the circumstances, and go after it in a prudent way.
Hmm. What do you think? Because you mentioned something there that got me thinking about what the market is valuing or not valuing. What do you think the market cares about right now? Does it care about sort of narrow but high grade epithermal veins, or is the market at a stage right now where it really only is going to care about sort of a high grade, huge porphyry? What do you think?
I would say both. I mean, from what I'm understanding, and again, this is not something I've done for the last 30 years. I mean, I'm in this game for the last 10. But grade is always the king, and especially if you have it close to surface, I think it's good. So yes, high grade and thick intercepts will always turn heads. On one hand, on the other hand, I mean, when I look back and I look at other people's successes, be that Yukon or Bolivia or Chile or Kazakhstan, it looks like no matter what you do, and in normal times, some of these press releases would justify and warrant huge appreciations in stock price. But I mean, I'm sad to say that it looks like the exploration, especially early stage exploration, is just not valued by the markets at the moment. And I hope that changes soon, because I think we are the key element in that cycle of creating and generating new targets. Um, I would say from a commodity standpoint, copper is absolutely going to be the key thing at the moment, and going forward over the course of 5 years. I forecast, even though I'm not a market specialist, I forecast a huge shortage of copper, not because of the increase in demand, although that might happen with China sort of recovering. I forecast that shortage because of the lack of supply. We are going to very soon not just softly land in terms of copper. I think we're going to crash land. And it's almost going to be like too little, too late. It's going to be like, Johnny come lately type of realization. Is that going to reflect an increase in price of copper per pound to $10, $15, like some say? I don't know. Like Ivanhoe guys and um, Mr. Friedland, I'm not sure. But I think copper is certainly in demand, will be in demand, and there's going to be less and less and less of it as the world's supplies are dwindling down, especially in Chile. So, a strategic asset. Battery metals, obviously, nickel and lithium. People forecast that lithium is kind of like a train or ship that's sailed away. I actually argue differently. I think in Europe, lithium is going to be needed and required by Germany and everybody else. So this is why I believe discovering solid, large tonnage resources of lithium in a European setting, a continent that's badly starved for those critical metals with no plan, I would say, forward in terms of how to secure those over the course of the next 30 years, and certainly well behind Australia and North America, I think is a good thing to do. And that's precisely what kind of led our thinking about, entering the battery exploration space in Bosnia as well.
Right. But I just said when we were talking about it, I sort of asked, what do you think the market cares about? But the market is made up of a bunch of people from all different spots in the world, basically. Have you, what have you noticed? Like, are European investors being more open to this story? Like, is this a story for the European investor, or does it
True.
work better with the North American investors?
Initially we started obviously with as a retail story in Canada and focused on Canadian capital as we started.
Hmm.
But of course, we were not oblivious to the fact that this is a European story and that we need to expand our awareness of Terra in the European capital markets context. Um, we've done this. I mean, probably could have done more, but done not little in the last 2 years. I mean, a couple of marketing trips to London, Zurich, and Germany. We have I wouldn't say significant, but certainly a good European shareholder base. I would love it to be bigger. I think, there is, especially in Germany and Switzerland, awareness of the need for these resources at Europe's doorsteps. Um, but again, like, I can say all those things until I'm blue in the face, but look at our share price. It's at 2.5, 3 cents. So you would think that, being at such affordable levels, being somebody with a promise of discovering large scale resources 500-600 kilometers away from BMW factories
Hmm.
in Bavaria would be galvanizers. So far, it hasn't. Again, I think it has to do just with the overall uncertainty and sentimental uncertainty that is worldwide. European investors are not immune to it. I think many of them are sitting on the sidelines waiting to see if we have hit the bottom or whether it's going to, or what the future 2 quarters are carrying. All those things, of course, are there. I mean, there's little we as a Terra company can do about it. What I can control, those things that I can control. Keep on hitting those thick intercepts or rich intercepts of silver in Trumavici. De-risk Brezhnev further. Go after high-grade Serbian silver and gold in Ceovište and try to access what I believe could be a replica of Rio Tinto's Jadar deposit in Serbia, but this time in Bosnia. So,
Mhm.
from a geological standpoint, all of our thinking is I would say on a regional context very sound. We don't go for just any targets, even though as a company we get offered and pulled by the sleeve many times by the locals, showing us different
Yeah.
copper showings, malachite, azurite here and there. But we like to focus our ideas and our attentions to those things that truly will move the needle. And given amount of resources and time we've had in the last 2 3 years, I think we've done a pretty good job of it.
Yeah. Well, I come from the same part of the world, so I know kind of
Right.
how it is. You have a bunch of uncles pulling in, and they know everything about politics to geology
Which
and
is
all
kind of
sorts.
cute. I mean, I
It is.
like that. I mean, this is the way you bond with the
Yeah,
locals, and you show.
I agree.
It doesn't take much effort and time to go and pay somebody respect and homage by actually driving with him for 10 minutes to see what is it that they've noticed,
Hmm.
having a shot of local brandy, and then carrying on. Those are the links that keep the project afloat. And I must say that from that standpoint, also something that maybe the potential investors want to know, because usually when you speak of Bosnia and Serbia, the first associations that come to mind is the troubles in the 90s and whatnot. And the way I like to flip that equation is saying, do you know of a jurisdiction on the face of the earth where you can move a project from the initial discovery to opening a mine in 6.5 years?
Hmm.
It's certainly not going to happen in Yukon or BC or Ontario or Quebec or Nevada or Arizona, the mature mining jurisdictions. But guess what? It happened in Bosnia with the Adriatic. So, obviously that's a true success story, and we wish to replicate at least a portion of it. But it's certainly a country that has an incredibly rich mining history, relatively small, but for that size, fairly rich with resources: nickel, copper, lithium, and obviously lead and zinc and base and precious metals, and very friendly to work with. The governments of Bosnia and Serb Republic, as well as the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, have very straightforward mining codes. you know what to do when it comes to applying for a new license. You know what to do when you have a license, how to maintain it.
Hmm.
So, I would say, for those who are not familiar with the region, this is, I would say, when it comes to Europe, together with Scandinavia and maybe Iberian Peninsula, the place to work when it comes to explore, when it comes to mining.
Yeah. And you also just have the advantage of being in a developed world, in many senses better than Western Europe, where I'm at right now. I oftentimes travel to that part of the world, and there's just a lot of stuff are just better. Some of the infrastructure and whatnot is just better than what you have in France, Belgium, and so on and so forth. So, but you say
Sometimes.
that you'd like to have more European investors on board. I get that, and I like that. And you're listed in Frankfurt too.
Yes.
But your primary listing is the CSE in Canada. CSE is tough to trade for a lot of European guys, for companies under 40 million market caps, I believe. Frankfurt barely has any volume, so also kind of hard to trade. Do you have any plans to move to a different exchange, say a bigger Canadian or maybe even the Aussie exchange?
Yeah. I mean, listen, if I mean, should we, let's say, acquire or get into cahoots with a Canadian, with an Australian strategic partner, I think it would
Mm,
make sense to list on the
mm,
ASX. Um, Graduating from the Canadian Securities Exchange to the TSX-V is fairly straightforward. It does cost money. And I'll tell investors or people who are watching this interview, the reason why we went to the CAC, that at the time of the listing back in June of 2022, the quote unquote lineup to get onto TSX was probably between 8 to 12 months long. This was post COVID or very soon after the COVID. We realized that, and again, in terms of liquidity, we trade very well, or the volumes are, especially last year, were respectable. We didn't realize
mm.
we actually losing any of the optionalities by going on the CST, which is fairly straightforward. We got listed, fairly easy. It's not expensive to maintain the listing, but again, at the same time, we realized we need to expose ourselves to Europe. Therefore, the Frankfurt listing as well. Again, moving to the TSX-V, if that is going to change and push the needle, can certainly be done to expand the ability to people to reach Terra. Um, Again, I know people in the Balkans. I mean, my friends and people who have been following the story, even our drillers, our shareholders, because they like what they see, and people can invest in the CSE from Sarajevo. It's not as cheap as it is for me or anybody else in Canada. You have to go through brokerage houses,
Mm.
but let's say a Raiffeisen Bank, you can
Yeah.
actually invest in the CSE or Banca Intesa Italian.
Mm.
So investments can be done. It's not easy, but it still can. So again, we would love to be in a position to be a TSXV company. I think there is some prestige to it. But I mean, we'll see. Right now, to tell you honestly, I'm really focusing and thinking that intercepting good high grade veins of gold and silver and maybe a porphyry system in the Balkans, making a discovery on a future lithium project, if everything lines up, God willing, is going to be much more material to us as a company than actually where we are traded. But absolutely, I don't deny the fact that making it easy on investors in terms of trading is also part of the equation.
Yeah, totally. Those are things that you think about as you mature as a
Yeah.
company. So it'd be interesting to see where this goes. Well, it's been a good conversation, Alex. I appreciate your time. I don't think I have too many other questions. You say you have 6 more news releases coming out.
Yeah.
4 of those, I assume, are holes from Brezhnev, as you said.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to see as well. And
That's
yeah,
not
what am I?
including the strategic things that may have to do with acquisition of new licenses, obviously. This is just pure drill intercepts. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Those
exactly.
ones I like the best.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see what's in there. I'm curious to see as well because that's something that I do think the market is going to care about. So good stuff. What am I forgetting to ask you? What am I not asking you that you had hoped I would ask you?
No, I mean this was very in-depth conversation, and thank you so much again for asking me such a variety of questions. I think all of them were very pertinent. Again, for those ones who don't know about us, we are a small, nimble, extremely affordable at this level junior explorer in the Balkans. I think the region that only yet has to show its true colors in terms of the riches it contains. Last year, the region was fairly quiet. I think us and maybe two other companies have actually drilled. which again shows the mentality of Terra Balcanica. Despite the challenging times, despite the fact it's very difficult to raise cash, we were not sitting.
Mm.
We were not idle. We moved ahead, and I want to make every single year a drilling year from now on. I know this is what the market cares, and that's hopefully what we will be able to do this year as well. Again, everything's still very much market dependent and cash dependent. But again, we are working hard, appreciating the situation that we are at the levels that we don't necessarily want to be. Want to work hard at getting that back, both from a technical standpoint and capital market standpoint. So over the course of next 12 months, what people can expect from Terra is a phase 3 drilling, hopefully this time in both jurisdictions, Serbia and Bosnia. The extent of which I cannot comment right now, but I hope it's certainly more than 2,000 meters like we've done in the last 2 years, significantly more. Some good corporate news in terms of the increasing our asset base also on the horizon if everything works well in the next 45 to 60 days. So something to look forward to as well. And yeah, a team that's keen to perform. Kind of slightly disappointed with the performance over the last 2 years, but I think largely that had to do with forces that were outside of our control. And I guess I get comments on co.ca like bravo guys, excellent, keep on hitting those excellent intercepts markets, but certainly wake up to this. This is an undervalued story. I read them, I kind of get even more sad because it looks like there's appreciation for technical achievements, but of course I understand fully that those have to be translated into the market cap ASAP for people to truly appreciate it because not only because of the respect towards the shareholders who invested the money in us, but also towards those ones we wish to attract with the interview like this.
Yeah, I agree. And the pleasure is all mine, of course, Alex. So thank you so much for doing this. Moving on, we are going to be traveling all the way to Canada, specifically to BC, to a company called Kingfisher Metals, which is a gold exploration company with multiple assets again in BC, Canada. Companies listed on the TSX Ventures Exchange and the ticker symbol KFR, where an average of about 60,000 shares trade each day with a 52-week high of 11 cents and a 52-week low of about 3.5 cents. With a market cap of less than 6 million Canadian dollars and about 130 million shares outstanding, today this is a 4.5 cent stock. There are about 21 million warrants and about 12 million options, leaving the number of fully diluted shares at around 163.5 million to be specific. The stock is tightly held, though. About 27% of all those shares are in the hands of insiders and 34% are in the hands of institutions, including some names that you might as well recognize, that being Crescat Capital, the Plethora Precious Metals Fund, and a few other big names that are probably on your screen right now. Excuse me, there's also some other known publicly traded companies on here that on the share registry. For example, EMX Royalty in Kenorland also own portions of this company. As of the last financial statement, which is dated September 30th, the company had about $2.5 million in current assets, 1.7 million of which was in actual cash. There was some account receivables and a little under $1 million in prepaid expenses. That sat on the balance sheet against account payables of about $650,000, and there is no long-term debt. I know I keep saying this, but you will want to go to surplus.ca yourself to see the most up-to-date financial data, though, because after this statement was published, a lot has happened. Kingfisher has been actively drilling, and they are also, generally an active company, which means that they have G&A, they have a burn rate, and more specifically, and this doesn't account for drilling, their burn rate sat at between $120,000 and $150,000 a month on average over the first 9 months of last year. Boring stuff to the side, though. Kingfisher has, technically 4 projects. They're nicely spread across the western side of British Columbia, almost evenly spread between sort of the middle, the north, and the south part of BC. But the focus of discussion here today and the focus for the company will and actually is their project in the Golden Triangle, so that'd be northwest BC, kind of in between the Red Chris and the Brucejack mine up there. The project is not called the HYI, despite the abbreviation on your screen. It's actually, this is actually short, or better said, it's just pronounced Highway 37 because it is, drum roll please, yeah, it's close to Highway 37, you guessed it. It's about 10 to 15 kilometers away from that highway, actually, so pretty close to it, or at least some of the main zones. Why I say some of the main zones? Because the project is not small. This is 370 square kilometer project, all of which falls within the traditional territory of the Tahltan First Nation there, but they're well familiar with mining and exploration, as is most of BC. This is the Golden Triangle, so many stones have been turned here. This project has been looked, so highway has been explored in the past too. It all started in around, well, it started way back in the early 1900s, but then a bit more aggressively in the 60s and the 70s, among others by Newmont. A few other companies also found some interesting stuff here as well over the years. And the project ended, as some of you will know, with Golden Ridge, which about 6 years ago drilled some decent over 100 gram-meter holes with a 1.1 kilometer strike. That was back in 2017, I believe. And that was at the Hank, and then at a later stage also it's a Williams and the Mary targets here. That's also a map on your screen right now. The Mary target, by the way, is now the focus for the company, and there's a porphyry trend, high-level porphyry trend, a big one at that too. It's 8 kilometers long, so there's a bunch of things happening alongside this trend. There's different alterations, so there were a lot of phyllic alteration, which that might, and I'm going to emphasize all the might, that might be due to hydrothermal fluids moving around, and hopefully we're bringing some of the goodies around that porphyry. Whatever mineralization was found at Mary sits within a 6 by 6 kilometer porphyry alteration footprint, and that is, of course, just a small part of the total land package, as I told you earlier. So, in a nutshell, the company believes that's really only a small portion of what's possible here. So, a lot of drilling happened here, or a lot of the drilling, although not, in the grand scheme of things, that is not a lot of drilling, just a little over 40,000 meters. But a lot of that happened some 10 years ago. And then in 2022, Kingfisher came along and entered into an option agreement with Golden Ridge, as well as Origin Royalties, essentially consolidating a 100% interest in what was previously multiple projects that they now call that Highway 37 projects. And they did that again because of that belief of this being an underexplored and prospective spot in BC, and not many of those are left out there. It would appear that this might be more than just a thesis, though, because last year they drilled 2,100 meters in 6 holes, and they hit some pretty decent stuff that was announced last month, actually, showing a new, and this was a 100-meter step out, with 438 meters of 0.4 grams per ton of gold equivalent, about 60% of which was actual gold, and there's also some copper and some moly in here too. Nothing to lose your mind over, though, you might say, and it's true. But what this does do, according to the company, is that it shows the potential for a whole lot more at the Mary area. What more, you might ask? Well, Dustin here says that it could host, again, a large porphyry system that is not unlike other deposits in the area, such as the KSM and Treaty Creek. So, again, all of this has turned all of their focus on this one area, basically. And that's where Kingfisher thinks drilling will be focused on in 2024, with permits being expected shortly. But of course, it's not only permits that the company is going to need, they're going to be needing money as well, and that will be part of the discussion here, of course, as well. Again, multiple other projects in here, including a discovery made in 2022 at the Gold Range project, also in BC, but sort of southwestern BC, if you will. But I'm not getting into that right now because the focus, again, for the company will be, as I said, Highway 37. But also because what I'm wondering here, Dustin, and now it's on to you, why now? Like, why even bother starting with a new focus and a pretty large one at that too, in this given market where financing is extremely difficult, where share prices are very low? They just, almost all the share prices go from upper left to lower right. So why not just sit the stormy seas out and I mean, wait it out? Why start now?
Well, as a corporate or as an individual investor, you want to buy things when they're cheap. And we had the possibility to actually enter into this consolidation and option agreement to put together a project for what we thought was a pretty good deal. Obviously, it's challenging to raise money in a tough market, but for example, when we started this company, it was pretty easy to raise money, and I don't think we actually could have gone after a piece of ground like this. It would have been too expensive. So that's why we had that pivot. We also had that pivot because, we gave Gold Range a really good shake on our top target there, and did well, big technical success, but did not get any share price appreciation over it. And ultimately, in our eyes, it was basically move on to the next target. and that involved moving into the Golden Triangle. So
Right.
a lot of companies will just continue to drill something for 10 years without any meaningful change to a project. But we'd rather go in, do good geoscience, test something, and if it doesn't look like we're onto a massive discovery, move on.
Right, but what I meant was more like, why think about doing a drill program in 2024 now? Because a lot of companies I interview on here will tell me we're just not doing anything. A lot of them do have maybe a deposit or something like that, but they're going to be like, oh, we're just not going to drill because the market doesn't care. Even if we could raise, on the $6 million valuation, like $3 million and do like 5,000 meters of drilling or whatever it might be, nobody's going to care. And our share price is not going to move. So yeah, I mean, why are you even thinking of drilling in 2024?
So I don't totally agree with that. If you look at companies like Hercules, one drill hole can really change a company. And if you're looking for, say, a 2-meter vein that's at 50 to 100 grams, yeah, that might not move the needle, even if it's a good result. But if you're going after big prizes like porphyry, copper, gold systems, which are what the market wants right now, you can have that change, and you're never going to have that change without taking shots. And the other thing too is I look at exploration companies as an investor, but also as a manager. We're not a savings account for people. If people put their money into these companies to take swings and to take big swings, and if we're not taking those swings, why would people want to keep their money in a company like that when they could put it somewhere else and put it to work? So I do feel like we need to push on. Obviously, things get toned down and you take less risks and you do smaller programs. But we need to push on.
It's tough, right? Because as my friend Nate, by the way, shout out to him, says, big targets doesn't always equal big mineralization, and so that's finding that big mineralization can take a lot of drilling. So maybe don't do it on the first go. What does help in that case is sort of to manage risk, and how a lot of companies have been managing risks. My personal biggest holding as well is by bringing in a strategic partner into a story, JV partner, or someone who takes a chunk out of the company or something like that. Is that something you're planning on, like, or how else do you plan on financing this thing going forward?
Yeah, that's definitely something we will look at going forward. I don't think on the project level. I would be more open to a strategic investment. And we have been in talks over the last year. Nothing has progressed significantly since then. But we do have supportive shareholders. We are in Canada, so we can raise flow through money. It's not going to be easy, but I think we can pull it off. And we'll see what happens with the strategic down the road.
All right. Well, again, I'm not getting too much out of that because I'm thinking, what are the total options? So you have the asset level, of course. You have bringing in someone who takes out whatever 20% chunk of the company or something, whatever it might be. But what else? What are the sort of the available options to you that you're exploring?
Well, I don't think we would want to do a joint venture since we are already optioning this project. It wouldn't leave us with much of it. So what I'm getting at is bringing in a strategic level shareholder that is funding the company for a stake in the company. That is one option, but just the traditional finance route, given the institutional level of ownership, there's likely quite a bit of capital available there. And then often you can top that up with flow through in Canada.
Yeah.
Our finance needs aren't huge to do a program this summer, but there's, it's still significant.
And I hope we can talk about that too. But you're bringing up an interesting point, obviously, flow through. How's flow through for gold explorers right now? I know there's a lot of interest for uranium explorers when it comes down to flow through, but how's that for gold explorers? How are you finding the market?
I haven't gone down that route quite yet, but I would say, last year there was money available. Towards the end of the year, it was challenging raising money last summer, but it was definitely there. With charity flow through, you can sell stock at a flow through premium to all our institutional investors, which are offshore. So there's a few routes you can take, but I would guess that there should be. It's pretty attractive getting the critical metal flow through credit, and ultimately, we've released gold results, but we're after a copper gold porphyry that would be, say, 50% copper credits if we find what we're looking for. So you can raise critical metal flow through, given that that's what we're trying to find.
Right. Okay. What's premium in BC? Was I'm forgetting.
It's over 30%.
That's over 30%. Okay, right.
But you can get in the 50 kind of range with charity.
Right. And that'd be a question as to institutional ownership, as I said, over 30% here, as to whether the institutions are in there, whether they're happy enough to keep putting money into this, again, because of how the market has been and sort of that stock price going, from upper left to lower right. And I assume you're talking to them, you're talking to Crescat, you're talking to Plethora. How are they, how are they dealing with the situation?
Money is definitely tight for everybody. Yeah, I think I would probably leave it at that. There is still money available, but it's definitely tight because there's not a lot of inflows coming into funds these days, and everybody's portfolios are generally down. So you're having to sell a loser to put into something else, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's an absolutely tough market. There's no way around it. And that's why I'm sort of starting the conversation there, which is maybe not the most pleasant place to start or talk about. But that's something that will have to be have to get taken care of. But okay, I mean, you sound optimistic. You say there's funding available. Good thing that you're in Canada too. I mean, if this was in Peru, you'd be, or whatever. I'm not picking on Peru or anything, but you'd be in a much tougher situation. Well, I mentioned permitting there. I don't expect anything would be too much of an issue. But how far up the permitting process are you right now?
So the majority of the project, save the Hank claim. If you look on our map, there's the option agreement we had with Golden Ridge, and then the remainder of the project was via Origin. So the remainder of the project that we were drilling on last year with Mary, that has a 5-year permit in place. So we'll be entering year 2 of that permit. And then if you don't do all the drilling outlined in the permit, I believe there's 100 drill pad locations within that. If you don't use it by year 5, you can actually add an extension on before you have to re-permit again. So we're good on that. We received that, I believe, June maybe of last year. Last summer, we applied for a same permit on the Hank block. And that's passed technical review with the BC Mines Office, and it's out for referral with the Tahltan First Nation, who we've got a good relationship with. So I don't see that taking much longer than a few months, most likely. So the entirety of the project should be permitted in advance of the drill program.
Okay. Advance of the drill program, what is that? When do you expect to start a drill program?
So I think we could probably get in there in June. Obviously this is all finance independent. Ideally, we would start doing some form of work in earlier June. There's actually it's nice when Google Earth flies new imagery for your project. There's some pretty new imagery on the project from, I think, June 18th of last year. And you can see that in a lot of the areas it would be fine going out. There's just the odd patch of snow. So sometime then, last summer we started around August 15th, I believe. So it was quite a late start. It'll be nice to get out there earlier because the best weather in the Golden Triangle is often actually early in the summer.
Right. How many drill holes? How many meters? In terms of target, I know you haven't published any official drill plans yet, as far as I could see, but I assume you do have drill targets. What are you thinking?
So that as well isn't totally finalized. I know talking to some of our bigger shareholders, and including us, we definitely want to go back to Mary. I'm not sure how many holes that would be. I would say at least a couple. And then we're trying to see if there's a good argument for drilling a hole at Williams. Working on 3D modeling of that. That has seen some pretty damn good grades. I think 0.9 gold equivalent over 350 meters. So they broke the 300 gram meter hole or threshold on that. And then Hank, it'd be nice to drill a few shallow holes there based on new structural ideas we have. Get a bit of a mix across them, kind of hedge our bets, while also putting the majority of the meters into Mary, because right now we see it as a target that needs to be tested. The opportunity there for a really big system is real. And you mentioned your friend said big target doesn't necessarily mean that. It's true. But there already is good intercepts in that area, and we already have good evidence of porphyry systems on the project. So I would say we're not going throwing darts out in moose pasture. This is a well-known porphyry district within the Golden Triangle.
Right. And in relation to historic drilling, is that something you're looking to re-drill some of those holes? Because you already have that data, but it'd probably be nice to communicate that to the market too. But what are you thinking? Bigger step outs like last year was 100-meter step out. What kind of step outs are you thinking this year?
So at Hank, I would be more inclined to be drilling closer to some of the historical intercepts there, partly because some of that data is quite old, and we don't have perfect drill logs for it, or core for that matter. Williams, fairly recent drilling, but there's some ideas we're starting to come up with that might justify drilling, past a historic hole, so you might get a guaranteed intercept. At Mary, we've considered drilling under some historic drilling. There's some of the deepest holes there actually bottom in mineralization. But in general, we're not the kind of team that's just going to go twin historic holes for the news release. Especially on a small budget, it's not adding that much. And I don't know if it's actually going to cause that much of a buzz. You might get short-term traders coming into the stock, but that's not necessarily who you want in the long run. You want people that believe in your thesis and your ability to execute. So I think we'll probably go and take some bolder step outs there underneath cover, based on, our analysis of the results that is still ongoing from last year.
I appreciate that answer because it just happens a whole lot, especially in this market. You want something that is, you want to attract the attention, at least if it's for a little while. But as you said, how long is that going to last? And is that really what you want to put out there? I've seen some of the communications that you put out on Twitter, and it sounds like you want to move the project forward, even if that doesn't mean moving the share price forward, which in your case would mean just doing bigger step outs, basically. So I appreciate that. What are you? Because you said based on our analysis, what specifically are you drilling? Where are you going? What's that? What are those drill targets based on?
So at Mary, so at Mary, there's a porphyry system already there. There's a couple actually. The cliff at the far end of this trend, and then the Mary at the north end. Mary stretches over, I believe, 1,200 meters or so of drilled mineralization that comes to surface there. But what really caught our eye when we came in this area was that you have a huge geochemical anomaly. So it's strong alteration. It's been mapped by Charlie Gregg, who's a pretty famous explorer and one of our lead advisor. So he mapped it back, I think, 2006. Had extensive soil sampling over it, drilling at one side of it, and then some really shallow drill holes kind of around the perimeter. We're talking sub 100-meter holes. But you get a dead, barren cover area in the middle of the mountain. Geophysics, IP, and mag shows that it all apparently ties together from one side of the mountain to the other. But nobody had drilled under there. So we took fairly conservative, but we did take step outs. We drilled a 100-meter step out from the known mineralization. That was the headline hole. That collar didn't cover. It only ended up being about 7 meters of cover, and we got into mineralization. And then a full kilometer to the south, we drilled hole 2 and 3, which were right on the edge of cover, but drilled underneath cover. And they hit pretty strong mineralization. The grades weren't crazy. I think up to 240 meters of 0.16 gold, but a lot of sulfide, not a lot of quartz veining. So you're not in the heart of a stockwork body. You're kind of on the flanking phyllic mineralization. And, Gail's an expert in these deposits, or VPX. She did her master's at KSM, worked there for over half a decade, worked at Bruce Jack too. And she knows what the KSM deposits look like. And this looks very, very similar, like you're on the outskirts of it. And it appears that everything's kind of pointing towards a deeper source for all of this, where you can get porphyries that coalesce at depth, basically. I don't know, can't think of a way to describe it right now, but just maybe if you have a hand, you can get little fingers coming off a porphyry, then at depth, you'll actually have the more bulbous, real circular porphyry body that people might think of.
Kind of a hub and spoke type of thing.
In a way, yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
Maybe less spooky, more like water bottles coming out.
Oh, well, that'd be good. Yeah, of course. But I'm happy you're mentioning the 3D KSM Bruce Jack camp there because uh, you're explaining geophysics, geochemics, and how all that might look comparable to that. What do you think you would have to see in the drill core next year to tell you whether you're zoning in on that source of that mineralization? So the palm of the hand that you were explaining, in terms of arsenic or antimony, or even more molybdenum or something, whatever else it might be. What do you think you're going to have to see?
So we're going to want to see an increase in gold and copper grades as we get into the higher heat source, but also a change in alteration. So right now we've been in mostly predominantly phyllic alteration. We should start to see more potassium feldspar, which could either be potassium feldspar. You could also see potassium and biotite, magnetite as you're getting closer to a potassic zone. One thing to point out is nobody's drilled copper mineralization other than chalcopyrite at the Mary area. There are some fingers of potassic alteration there, but they're not in the real heat engine of the system yet, where you'd expect to get bornite, for example. Which you do see at Williams actually, and you get better copper grades there with that.
Right.
So we want to see the gradational metal and alteration chemical changes as you're going towards the heat source. But you should see grade pick up and hopefully more copper, and you'd get out of zinc, which would be a halo, and you'd get into better copper grades.
So that when I mentioned at the beginning that you had drilled a hole that was 0.4 something gold equivalent, that was about 60% was actual gold, moving towards, the next drill results would have to start getting more of, less than 60% of the equivalent should be gold, basically. More of it should be copper.
Yeah. Well, that being said, though, if you get into a bornite zone, you can get some pretty damn good gold numbers with good copper numbers. It's hard to say. So Williams has an age date of 188 million years. I've been told that there's an age date that we can't. It's not public, but I think it's around 189 for Mary. These are pretty comparable to the KSM belt. Within KSM, you get mineralization over a few million years across the deposits, and there's some changes within those deposits, but more or less they're fairly similar. Kerr, for example, has pretty good copper grades. Mitchell, which is the bottom of the Mitchell Snowfield system, has better copper grades. Whereas Snowfield, which is the top of the Mitchell system, has high gold to copper grades. So you should get copper grades improved. And I think Williams is on this project, and I think Williams is a good example of being at the valley bottom and a deeper part of a porphyry where you're getting true potassic alteration. You're getting 0.35 copper, 0.45 gold kind of numbers, which is closer to 50-50 value. Whereas you're still high up in the system at Mary and getting those relatively high gold grades. So, these systems could look similar if you get to the right depth, but there could still be some variation among them.
Okay. By the way, for people listening, we're obviously noticing that my geological knowledge is that of a 5-year-old. You can go to Twitter and look up DPGEO. So DPGEO. That's Dustin Perry's Twitter profile. He does a great job of explaining the geology around the company and all that. He covers pretty much all the bases. So for more information, head over there, of course. But I'm okay, so I get it. So basically the phyllic exploration, as far as I get it here, is sort of the fingers of that hand that you explained, and then once you're getting towards the palm, which is where the source of this mineralization is going to be, alteration is going to change. That's something you want to see. That's good information there. How much money are you expecting to be paying per meter drilled there?
Last year was probably a little over 900 a meter. Which was pretty expensive, but that had to do with a later start. So we had some bad weather and some ground conditions to deal with. I would imagine we could do it a little less than that this year with an earlier start, maybe in the 800 kind of range.
Okay.
Still, we're still looking at about $2 million probably for a program that's meaningful.
Okay, because that's what I was going to ask. Like, how much how many meters do you think you have to put into it to kind of zone away from that phyllic alteration?
I think a couple big holes there, a couple 500-meter holes there should be a pretty good test.
Hmm.
You might even be able to kill a target with 2 holes like that, which ultimately is the goal in exploration.
Yeah.
You're trying to basically, if you put a hole somewhere and somewhere where the porphyry has to be to make the tonnage you need, and it's not there, it doesn't leave you with that many options. And on a project like this, it's not a one and done. You just move on to the next porphyry target, because you might have to roll back at some point. But it's I know I had a good chat with Batra the other day, and that's the way they look at it too. It's we want to swing for the fences, and if you don't hit it, you try again, but don't waste capital doing tiny step outs or drilling really conservatively. You should really go for it.
Especially in this market, I agree, because the only thing that is going to attract the market's attention is looking at some of your peers in BC. What they've been doing is, your American Eagle type of holes, right? That's attracted the attention of the market. But what if they were doing, smaller holes, or doing some I mean, other stuff that are not as attention grabbing, like shallower holes or something like that? All that money would have just been gone without improving your cost of capital, basically. So I agree with that strategy. And it's sort of hit or miss. I mean, either it works or it doesn't, and then you move on. Do you think you're going to be releasing that hole by hole, though, given that those are larger holes, or is it going to be like you did last year with sort of all the drilling at once?
If we are testing different targets, it would probably be separate.
Hmm.
But if it was 2 holes into Mary, I don't really have much of a comment, but it likely would probably just go in one release.
Hmm.
But if we had other areas like Hank, it would make sense to release those separately.
Well, what's the thinking behind that? Releasing those 2 holes together? Because again, relating this to American Eagle, they've so far they've done just hole by hole.
Well, they're further along. That they're drilling an area that has seen a fair bit of drilling, and they're a little further along in their understanding of it. So they probably know what's going to grade and whatnot. For us, it's still early stage exploration. If you drill a hole and you can see it in the core box, it's full of copper mineralization. Sure, maybe you rush that and you want to get it out the door, but sometimes it's also telling the story, a geological story, which is pointing towards something. It's really hard to say.
Yeah, this is a very difficult point in the Lausanne curve in general to market and tell the story. In my experience, how many? Because you said they are further along. It's true. American Eagle is a bit further along. How many years do you think you would be behind them? Like, is this a 2-year type of thing?
Oh, it's really hard to say because everything can change with one drill hole, and you get your share price up, and then you've got a huge budget, so you can catch up pretty quickly with drilling.
Hmm.
It's really really hard to say.
Yeah.
I would say at least a year, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Well, but talk to me about that. Like, how do you market it? How do you tell that story besides what you've been doing? Again, good job on what you're doing on Twitter. But how do you tell the story outside of that? Like when you go to conferences, what are you pitching? What are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Who are you really targeting at this stage? And just talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I think the big story here is that we've got a very experienced technical team that has a lot of time spent in the Golden Triangle. Gail's very knowledgeable. Charlie's had a lot of success as he's having at American Eagle, but before that, he mapped for the Geological Survey of Canada across the Golden Triangle, and so between the two of them, we've got some of the smartest brains working in the Golden Triangle, focused on a big chunk of ground that has evidence of good evidence of mineralization. I think you'd be hard pressed to find another junior of our size in the Golden Triangle that has a project this big with three different deposits on it with over 200 gram meter intercepts.
Yep.
So there's clear evidence that you've got a porphyry epithermal district here, which really de-risks the opportunity for there being a lot of meat on the bone. So the bet is we've got good fertile ground and we've got a good team to explore it. and then supportive shareholders too. So I would say still going to be a challenge, but we have better access to capital than some groups.
I like that. I like that, Dustin. I like you're very straightforward about these things. And the geological risk is obviously still present. And you communicate that properly. So I like it. What happens in the meantime, before getting a permit, before getting the financing, before starting to drill? What happens in the meantime? What are you doing in terms of news releases, something coming out, going to conferences, whatever it might be?
I'm taking a bit of a pause on conferences. I was doing it fairly hard in the fall. I'll be at the PDAC in March, and then otherwise, just trying to communicate and update as many people as possible in advance of whenever we do a financing. Right. So that's going on. Then internally, geologists are working away on everything that they're normally working away on. We do have, I guess, 2 younger geologists. Younger than me, and then we've got Gail as well, who's part-time, full-time with us, but part-time due to a young child. So we're everybody's working away at their desks on reporting for last year, but also 3D models, which haven't really been done on this project before, right? Which everybody talks about technological advances and whatnot, but it is kind of having a good geological model is pretty key for exploration. So I think it will make things easier going forward.
Right. Well, so that G&A that I went through at the beginning, I said it's about 120 a month, $120,000 a month. Was that because you're going to a lot of conferences and you expect that to scale back, or like how do you look at G&A projections?
Yeah, that's part of it. That also includes our geos in there, who are generally paid for by the financing, the flow-through financing. So it's kind of hard to look at that as G&A. It should really be under geology. But then again, they are on full time, so you still got to pay the bill. I think we've made a bunch of efforts though to cut the costs down. So we're definitely we're under 100 now, I would say.
And that's what you're targeting for 2024, I assume, especially prior to financing and targeting under 100.
Yeah, we're well under that right now.
Okay, good.
But Mark, you do need to do marketing, and you need to go meet people, and so at some point here, we will have to spend some money on that. But going to be pretty frugal with that for the time being.
Right. Okay. Well, I think it's a simple story. It's I typically do much longer interviews, but it's simple. I mean, it's either going to work or it's not. You expect to get the permit. You don't expect to have many issues with that. Then you're going to have to get the financing, and then you're going to go and drill again, sort of swinging for the fences at Mary and hopefully 2 of the other targets as well. So I think I'm making sense of all this. You said you talked to Plethora and a bunch of the other actually smart people in the industry, unlike me. So what are they asking you that I'm not asking? What should I be asking you?
Well, the main thing is, I think, how efficiently and cheaply can we do a drill program to test these targets because of dilution right now. So that's obviously a big concern for everybody, especially myself. I'm not sitting on a ton of cash right now. I'm almost exclusively in mining stocks and down on pretty much everything right now. So it's going to be hard to redeploy capital into Kingfisher, and I don't want to see my position just continue to get chipped away. So we need to find a way to do things cheaply, which is hard these days with inflation. I would say that's one of the big things, but people are generally quite happy and think we're onto something significant. So, I will add we've had consistently good exploration results since we started this company. Share price has consistently gone down, but at Gold Range we did good grassroots exploration. Broke the 100 gram meter threshold on a complete grassroots drill program. I think it was about 180 or so gram meter hole we put out this year. So we haven't screwed anything up in the field. We've been putting out pretty good results and saying what we're going to do. We haven't said we're going to go drill 1,000 gram meter hole, because you don't know if you're going to do that, but someday hopefully it will come.
Sure. And I understand those projects, especially Gold Range, right? Yeah. Well, Gold Range is as far as I understand it, you've you don't have to incur any other expenses on it for the next like 10 years or something along those lines. So you're fine to sit on it. But why? I mean, if would it be possible to use that as part of the financing, option it out, sell it, do something with it so that you can get some money into Mary?
Yeah, I would like to get some money for that, but then again, it's easier said than done. If the gold market picks up, I think it will be a lot easier to do something with that, and we're definitely open to pretty much all possibilities with gold range right now.
Yeah. But and at the beginning I said you have I believe I said you have 4 projects because I looked it up on Junior Mining Hub. What happens to the other land packages in the meantime?
So at Tibbert, we've been doing basically the bare minimum spend to keep the claims in good standing. Just doing regional systematic work to advance that. It would be good to get a partner in there. It is costing us about $100,000 a year right now. We did a fairly short program last summer there. So that's what we're doing there. At Extol, that was our listing project, and an incredibly sexy project. There's probably multiple VMS discoveries to be made there, but it's been a very challenging place to work from a social license standpoint. So that project we basically put on the shelf due to that. So yeah, they're all really on the shelf for the most part.
Yeah.
And our focus is on Highway 37.
Right. And all of them available for option or sale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What would you want? I like asking this question. Let's say I come along tomorrow and I say, Dustin, I want to start my own company, although I don't know why I would do that to my wife. But let's say I want to be a junior mining CEO. What do I have to do? What do I have to give you? What kind of a deal do you want from me?
Probably a combination of cash and equity, and a work commitment.
Yeah. So, but it's not that you would be pushing for an outright sale. Like you'd still be happy with a work commitment and some cash.
Yeah, I think with an option agreement, it's good generally to do an all or nothing. So somebody doesn't just use it for promo or whatever for a year, and you break up the percentage. They need to actually give it a good shake to get it earn into a percent.
Right. Okay. Well, good. Dustin, there's a bunch of things that are hopefully going to be happening. So hopefully I can follow along. Thanks so much for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, good to meet you.
All right, moving up the market cap spectrum, but staying in the Golden Triangle this week. Next up is Scottie Resources, a gold exploration company with a both an old and a new discovery in northwestern BC. Company is listed on the TSX Ventures Exchange under the ticker symbol SCOT with 1T, so that's SCOT, where an average of about 70,000 shares trade each day with a 52-week high of 35 cents and a 52-week low of 16 cents. With a market cap of, let's call it 50 million Canadian dollars and 288 million shares outstanding today, this is an 18-cent stock. There are 20 million warrants and 26 million warrants, and 23 million options, leaving the number of fully diluted shares at 337 million. 6% of the company is held by insiders, and according to internal estimations, over 60% of the company is held by high net worth individuals and institutional investors. Looking at the last financial statements, which are dated November 30th, the company had $1.7 million in current assets, most of which in account payables, about $1 million that is, and about $650,000 in cash and cash equivalents. That sat on the balance sheet against account payables of about $1 million, and there is also no long-term debt. You guessed it, though, you're going to want to go to setterplus.ca yourself to see the most up-to-date financial data, though, because after this statement was published, Scottie has been raising capital, most recently closing the first tranche of a private placement, getting in $2 million of non-flow-through money at 18 cents and a 3-year half warrant at 28 cents. Of course, running the company is unfortunately not free, although Brad would love it if it were that way. So keeping the lights on, the staff happy, and the marketing informed also costs money. For Scottie Resources, that total burn, excluding exploration, of course, stuff like that, that comes up to about $300,000 a month on average, again, judging by that last financial statement. Boring stuff to decide. Again, the focus here is the Golden Triangle, southern part of the Golden Triangle, so about 30 kilometers south of Brucejack and about 20 kilometers to the north from Ascot's Premier, which is expected to be operational this year. Well, hopefully anytime soon, actually. What Scottie has over here is a land package. It's about 60,000 hectares. That's 600 square kilometers. And most importantly, what lies within that land package is the past producing Scottie gold mine that operated for about 4 years, give or take, from 1981 to 1985, producing a little over 100,000 ounces at an average grade of 16.2 grams per ton. So not too shabby. Of course, we all know what happened to the gold price after that, and having financed the capex at an over 20% rate, which was normal at the time. It was the 80s. The company that owned that mine couldn't keep it operating, and it left about a 2-year unmined reserve when it shut it down, and that's what Scottie is sitting on right now. That's not the only thing, though. That was the quote-unquote old discovery that I was referring to. There are other targets on this area, most of which are undrilled, by the way. So Scottie has identified 30 mineralized zones, only 7 of which have been drilled to date. Most of the focus, though, and most of the money here goes into the Blueberry Zone, which is about 2 kilometers northeast from that past producing mine. And Scottie has drilled here a few times over the last, call it 4 or 5 years, and they've intersected multiple high-grade sulfide-rich veins with sort of an envelope, if you will, of lower-grade materials starting in 2019. That was when they reported that new discovery that I was referring to, and that was an interval of nearly 35 meters of about 7.5 grams per ton of gold, which my primary school brain says that it's almost 260 gram meter holes over there. After about 20,000 meters of drilling in 2023, a couple of more high grade, though not as wide, intercepts were reported across the land package, most of which was at Blueberry, by the way. So last month, specifically at Blueberry, there was some grades reported. You can check that in the website, of course. And at the end of 2022, the strike length of this north-south trending mineralized zone was about 1.5 kilometers. And so far, it's being tested to a depth of about 400 meters. Again, about 20,000 meters of drilling happened across the land package last year. So yes, concentrated in the Blueberry Zone, but they also drilled at the Scottie Gold Mine and a few other targets to the north, some of which has already come back with some positive numbers. And I believe at the time of recording, there are still a few more results from that whole 2023 program still to be released, but the majority is already out there. Again, though, just visit the website for the most up-to-date drill results. You're going to find them under the news section there. But so with all that, I think it's clear. Okay, there is mineral potential there. There's just a bunch of gold sitting under the historic Scottie gold mine. There's also just physical room for growth because this is not a small land package. The past producing gold mine also seems to be extending potentially into that Blueberry Zone, which the geos are telling me should be a positive sign. And so a bunch of other boxes are checked, right? But I want to talk strategy here for a second, Brad, because this is a horrible market, to put it mildly. And there's just multiple ways to move this company forward, as far as I understand it, among which, pushing to maybe, I don't know, restart the past producing mine and finance more exploration through cash flow. I don't know if that's possible. Or define a big deposit in and around the mine and find someone to pay a premium for it, or sell it for parts, zone by zone, if you will, given that there isn't all that much real estate available in the Golden Triangle anymore. And there's probably a half a dozen other options that are in your head. So yeah, talk to me about that. Where does this go from here?
Wow. So much said. Hey, great introduction, but I will say I did find something that was incorrect, and it's an important piece.
Please do.
So it was 300,000 a month burn rate, and it just simply is $100,000. It's not 300.
Okay.
But anyways, besides that,
Let me check where I got that
yeah,
from.
pretty clear on how you break down the company, and so that's great. I've never had anyone just kind of lay it out that way, so I appreciate that. But we go back and we can go over those numbers another time. But it just, our burn rate's not 300. Oh my gosh, although it is getting more and more expensive to run
Nope,
these
you're
things.
totally right. So I have this. Well, yeah, thank you for correcting it. So what I did do is that, yes, I didn't subtract. Okay, so taking out share-based compensation and and the exploration expenses at the 3 months that ended. You're totally right. It was 290 for the 3 months. That's under 100 grand a month. Yeah, thank you for catching that.
Oh yeah, no. It's just, there's so much information on all these things, and I break down other companies.
Yeah.
So anyways, but it was like, oh no, please. We're very good stewards of capital here. So but no problems. And then so, kind of on the latest thing you said is, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
And and then you break, I am not going mining at all. Okay, I'm an explorationist, but yes, there is a mine permit. Yes, there's an old mill there, and then now we have ore. I mean, there's no question we've demonstrated that. But that's not the function. The street's littered with guys you think it's step outside their lane. I think we stick to the guns. We haven't changed what the goal is. We'll just keep defining a deposit. There's mills on either side of us, but as Scottie, Blueberry, or just Scottie Resources, the company grows, we haven't answered the question, are we standalone or not? And with the limited amount of drilling that we've done over the last 5 years, where we've always been shorthanded from day one. I mean, we've had such great success in the last few years, but it's just when no one really cared. And so I'm always constantly raising money at around the same price of the last round, and that's been frustrating. And so you point out that we're close to 300 million shares outstanding, but I'm also blessed in the last few years. It's usually the same investors year and year again, like maintain their positions. So we're lucky that way. And if you look at our company from a private placement point of view, we really haven't lost much money for people. I mean, within a couple pennies now, most of my financings are at 21, 22, 23 cents. So when you look at, just the names that own my company, Eric Sprott's probably 9% still, Gold 2000, like Kevin Jennings, this ex-CFO Barrick Africa, these guys are all in at that higher price. I've never actually done a financing in over 5 years at this level. So it's really on sale right now. Especially when we found a deposit. It's we need to keep working at it, but it's pretty clear to see, and we've turned a big corner, and now it's just an idea of how big is it, and so we're not finding any constraints at this moment. It's just you got to find that as someone who's responsible for the company and for the shareholders. And I didn't start the company. I started as a shareholder. My shares I purchased, and I self-funded the company. I truly care about dilution, where in 2019, when we drilled that 7.5 gram over 34 meter hole, I own 19.9% of Scottie, and I was lending the company money because I couldn't breach that 20%, just because it just makes, if you go over 20%, you have to report when you go to the bathroom. And so I was lending money, and so now I've diluted myself down to, I'm probably just under 5% of the company. But up until now, I've been happy with it. It's frustrating right now because I'd rather own a smaller percentage of something big than a big percentage of something small all day long. And so I've been comfortable, but it is frustrating right now. This is about as bad as I've ever seen it in mining, and believe me, I've through the late 80s, early 90s in Canada. I mean, I was a mining service guy, and maybe 97 was worse than right now, but it's, again, just so hard. I mean, I'm almost 60 now. I was in mid-20s then, and I certainly didn't have the exposure like I have now. So it feels, I'm trying to question myself, is it worse now, or was it worse in 97, 98? But I mean, it was bad government policy in Canada, and particularly British Columbia in 97. And then that actually started, this is my theory, that really started a South American mining boom, because BC was not investable back then. So that was really bad time, where I went from turning down 60% more jobs than I could take. And I was claim staking, building camps, making sure geologists didn't kill themselves in the mountains, to not being able to get a line cutting job. So it stopped on a dime. And so here it's different. We're doing work. There's still money being spent in Canada. So that is a big difference. but just nobody cares. And so the question is, you know, as investors, when there's blood on the streets, I mean, this is a lot longer in the tooth than I expected it to be. And, you know, I blew my brains out last year. We drilled 20,000 meters. Everybody was running away and going, okay, we're going to preserve capital. And I really honestly thought 23 was going to turn in our favor. So I spent all our money. And, but all my shareholders knew what I was doing. And we still got 20,000 meters in for, you know, $300 a meter, $315 a meter all in. It's quite extraordinary. Other players in our area, those drill costs are a lot more than that. And we're really good operators, but we also have the luxury of the infrastructure that we have. I have the town of Stewart right on a road. I'm not using helicopters for the most part. And that's why, you know, for the last few years, Blueberry has been my lowest hanging fruit, but it's also my cheapest drilling because I just don't have to build pads and use helicopters, of which I'd love to get in around that Pluton because we're just having success after success. So, you know, we'll get at it. But for 2023, now I'm talking a lot. You know, it's a game time decision here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm waiting for a report that we commissioned to help us understand if our back of the envelope is, you know, realistic. And you know, I'm in the position that if I wanted to, we have the ability to drill off a resource. If I wanted to put up 1 million on the board, 1 million ounces, we're pretty comfortable that we could do that. I'll know how much money that'll cost me here in the next couple of weeks, knock on wood. So that's one of the things on the docket. Do we do that? Now, my big shareholders, they're not really concerned about that right now. They see it. They believe there's a transaction that'll happen in the future. Because I have 2 mills on either side of us, we know that metallurgically we're compatible with both mills. That's one of the studies we did in 2023. And they're 2 different mills, right? They use different processes. One's a gravity flotation, the Bruce Jack mill, and then it's a CIL plant at the soon to turn on SCOT mill, which should be pouring gold here in the next couple months. And we're compatible with both those. That was a big win because we didn't quite know if we were hoping we were. And so, yeah, that's, you know, what kind of program do we do for 2023? I think we're weeks away from knowing. And, but yeah, stay tuned. I still have a little bit of news I got to put out on Blueberry. You'll probably see that here in the very near future. So I can get, you know, I still haven't given all the news out for 2023. And then we can start talking about 2024. That's, yeah.
How many, something that you said there made me think standalone potential. I assume you're talking about that 1 million ounces that you said. But how many meters do you think, you don't know how much money that's going to cost, but how many meters are the geos telling you that it's going to take for you to drill before you can start hoping to prove that?
I'll never say the number, but I can tell you what I had in my mind. It looks like we're a lot closer than we would have thought. That's what I can say, but it's not an extraordinary. Like, again, I'll say the number, I'll be wrong because, you know, I'm 2 weeks away from the report. It is going to be way better than what we would have initially. We're very close to being there right now. So that's kind of what, you know, but let me get that final report. It's not my work. It's somebody else's work. But what we've found internally, and, you know, I've got a really good technical team. I'm not a geologist. Been around geology my whole life. I think we were selling ourselves short. It's probably a little better than we would have imagined. And then you have to understand, it's just not an easy equation. I get to kind of pick, right? I mean, higher grade, lower volume, lower grade, higher volume. And you know, you model these things. There's more than one way to attack these things. So that's kind of where we're at. Do I want to go, do I like grade or do I like volume? And so these are the things that we'll see, you know, and we'll pick door number 1, door number 2 for the model. And then that's what we go with. But what I can say is internally, we're a lot closer than we would have thought and totally viable. I'm not saying we're going to drill off a resource, but if I had to, I don't think it would be that much work. Not nearly as much as we would have maybe thought 6 months ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, in the big scheme of things, not very expensive.
Why I'm asking, but then the question is what is very expensive and what's not very expensive? Because again, if you want to double that program that you did last year, I mean, just do the same thing this year. You're gonna have to raise what, about 5-6 million bucks on top of what you just raised, something like that.
Correct. We've got so I'm live right now with a finance, and it's funny, just full disclosure, I'm having a hard time giving away, like selling it at 18 cents. And, you know, Ross Beatty took half that financing, right? You know, the names are every name that's come in are existing shareholders. And so that's how dead the market is right now. But yes, with a mixture of charity flow through and hard dollars, you know, we're sitting at around $5 million in the bank currently right now.
Okay.
So other things that one may or may see in the future is that we bought our royalties back about 2 years ago. And so that is a possible way to non-dilutive financing to do we want to talk, you know, we could sell a little bit of a royalty, and, you know, for what I paid for it and what I could sell for it will make me look like a great businessman. So, and then, you know, we're talking with corporates, and so, yes, we have a little bit of cash. Problem is 5 million is not a lot of money for us anymore. You know, 3 years ago, that was a big, you know, big number, and we were really excited. But because now we're at these stages where, hey, we're not hunting for something, we'd like to prove it up as quick as possible. So we'll see what the you know, I've got options. I'm in no duress, but yeah, I've got about $5 million in the bank. You're correct. You know, the money owed to us by the government is it always takes so long. I think that was $900,000. I mean, that's jobs for people. So that's incoming, and then we've closed a little bit of that financing. And what I'll do is I'll close the final of it all this week, get that put to bed, and then we go off forward. So for sure, we have enough to do a program, even if I didn't raise another dollar. But we are working on other initiatives right now that are non-dilutive as best we can. We're not out begging for money. We're again, if I could bring in another 10% partner, I think that'd be the best I can do for my shareholders, because, you know, the more people I can get to convince them to be here for a transaction. There will be a transaction one day with Scottie. I can't tell you when, but we're a lot closer to the end than we are to the beginning. And you know, I'm shocked that the equities haven't responded with the gold price where it's at right now. I'm shocked that the gold price is over 2,000, given all the data that's out there. You know, gold should be 1,700, and we shouldn't complain. 1,700, 1,800 is a great price for gold. So it's things are topsy-turvy and at this moment, but I've seen similar things, whether it's the oil business or, you know, I've seen $10 oil. Forget the negative oil. Everyone, oh, remember when it went negative? That's a total different scenario. But I have seen $10 oil and people willing to jump out of windows. And, you know, 3 years ago, CNQ you could have bought for $10. It's a $90 stock right now. Like, I mean, and you couldn't, you know, I was pounding my table. You know, I had my success in the energy business, you know, and I have a portfolio outside of Scottie, and everybody I was talking going, how do you not buy CNQ? Like, it's, you know, how do you not do it? And no one did. And now today it's probably $85 Canadian dollars. You know, you could have bought Cameco and nobody would even listen to you 2.5 years ago. Right. And so that's where we're at with the gold equities. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think we go back to a gold standard, but when you look at the central banks buying gold around the world outside the G7, I'm going, I just try and block out the noise. That is a real.
Well, I tried to block out a lot of that noise too, because I mean, what do you do with it as a junior? Not a whole lot, right? What you mentioned there, though, is something that you could do something with, was that 10% partner, bringing that in. That's obviously an interesting thing to talk about, because Blueberry's strike length might, and that's emphasis again on the might here, but it might be expanding into Newmont's, there'll be ex-Newcrest's property there to the south. What if it does? Like, what does that mean for the future of Scottie Resources? Could Newmont be that 10% strategic partner because of the potential for Blueberry extending into their property?
Certainly. And then also, if not only to that southern end, and in 2018, they drilled right where that contact was, but like their thinking and our thinking were the same. They thought it was an east-west extension of the Scottie gold mine, but they had like an 80-gram sample right, you know, 300 meters from where it enters into their land. They drilled it. They had success, but their drills were turned in a way that they're trying to see if they could hit an east-west extension. They had some success, but they didn't have the theory, and nor did we at that time. So yes, it possibly that's something that needs to be followed up on. But more exciting, if you look at the stockwork zone on the very north end of Blueberry, and there's a strike slip fault, and we've been drilling these, long intervals of very, very low grade, that too runs into Newmont's land, of which would suggest, is it? Now, I'm not saying it is, but, we're treasure hunters and we're trying to piece together models. We're going, is that the heat source for actually what's happening at Blueberry? Is it a gold porphyry? And so we've only got 5 or 6 holes, very interesting. And we're not going to ring the bell yet, but certainly you would not drill that. And I think Newmont, they're aware of things, but Newmont doesn't have to do much, and you have to let them really get their feet underneath them on the Brucejack asset. I mean, it's the same team, I understand, even from Pretium, the technical team went to Newcrest and then now Newmont. And for a lot of it are the same people who people I know personally. And I mean, I lived in Smithers most of my life, and that's where the Pretium's office was. And it was because they built the power, when Brucejack power line, that's why I got involved and wrote my first check into Scottie. It was called something different back then. So, they need to internally figure out what they're doing with that Brucejack asset and just learn how to run it. You look at the equities right now, they don't care. Heck, you can buy Newmont today, like they never even bought Newcrest. Like what if I was 40 years old, I'd sell this house and I'd buy Newmont and Barrick. I would, if I really, again, I'm at a different stage in my life, but I'm sitting there talking, I'm going, I would sell this house and I would bet, because in 2 years from now, in my assumption is Newmont's a double, right? Barrick should be trading $40 right now and I just take it from cash flows, for Canadians, it's $21. I mean, I own both of them, but I'm just going, it doesn't make any sense. So Newmont in the near term is probably not that guy. They're very well aware of us. We meet, as I do with many corporates. But yeah, I don't think I think everybody wants to see what happens with Ascot. Right. And that's, and I think it's just people, I hardly get through a conversation where people don't bring up Ascot and internally, I believe Newmont is probably more likely than Ascot when the time's right, but I don't know the answer to that question. Right. But that's just how my mind works, and I'm wrong a lot. So, and I just base that on what they paid for GT Gold. We know, what will Newmont allow someone else to buy that asset for? That's really, how it goes. They're businessmen, right? Business people, sorry. And they just go, okay, are they going to let somebody buy Scottie for $100 million? I mean, 50, let's say someone offered us a 100% premium right now. I don't know if the board, if we would accept it, we would put it out there, but because we have such a large concentration of holders that aren't there to make 5 cents or be it, I don't know if they would take it, because, I've got 4 guys that own just under 10%. I own 5%. Ross Beatty now owns 5%. And then there's a whole host, 5 or 6 other people that I'm in contact all the time, all in that 3 to 4%. There's a lot of guys own 3, 4, 5 million shares of this company. So it's easy for me to gauge what they want to do. I don't think we have any more institutions, because apart from Gold 2000, right? Conway out of Switzerland, because part of my financing, they just maintain their 10% position in the company. So I know they've held in. I like doing non-brokered financings, because then I get to see where everybody's at in their share count, where if I do a bot deal, I never really get to see who owns what. So there's a little bit of advantage to that. So I just think in the long run, there's an asset there. It's steeply dipping, very high grade, in the right jurisdiction, power, mining permit. When the time's right, we're not blinking.
Yeah,
we'll move this on. I'm not trying to sell it at the top of the market, but I'm certainly not interested in working as hard as we have for the last 8 years to sell it at this stage.
Sure.
We always get tire kickers.
That does make sense, and it's making me think also about the. I believe you've guided an MRE by the end of the year. Before, I don't know if you're still planning on doing that, but if you are, You're mentioning the results that came back from the northern part of the package that you're sitting on right now, and that's guiding sort of wider intercepts but lower grade, suggesting, that porphyry that you just talked about. But what do you do then in 2024 if you want to build that MRE? Where is drilling going to be focused? Blueberry or the North or the Scottie mine, or equally spread? How do you build this MRE basically?
The easiest way for me to do it would be, so what I kind of asked, like one of the questions I wanted to ask from this company is like, okay, we have a back of an envelope at Scottie, and that's an easy back of the envelope because you have to understand there's 700 drill hole database there, right? When they produced at Scottie, they had a 10-gram cutoff. So there's this natural halo around that existing ore body where they're just throwing stuff out at 10. Well, the average cutoff grade now is 3 grams. So, and because there's 700 drill hole database, and we went and did the task of relogging all the old core that we could find, and with our drilling, and now we have underground permits. So I just need to do a couple confirmation holes. We could put up, it's pretty easy for me to put up, I'm not allowed to say numbers, but 30, 40%, 30% of maybe $1 million deposit, maybe. And so that does not cost very much money. It just, most of the drilling doesn't cost money. For me, just make sure underground safe. I got a screenshot. Like, again, we have the permits to do that. We've been working towards that. And then I asked them to go, okay, give me the quickest 750,000 ounces at Blueberry, because I'm not going to try and drill it all off. It's too dilutive for the shareholders.
Of course.
But so you would just take that northern end of Blueberry. I mean, it's 1 ounce material, but because we space things so wide, or we basically did a 100-meter diamond pattern, thinking that we were smart, that if we put a hole in the middle of those diamonds, if you can imagine, then you're just kind of 50 meters away from everything, right? And that's, but what I think we're finding is that we might not need to be 50 meters spacing. It could actually be a little bit wider than that. So I just kind of said, give me the quickest way to get the 750,000 ounces at Blueberry. I'm feeling comfortable that I could backfill, something in at Scottie, and probably a little bit more. And Scottie, I estimate, my big guess is about 12 grams. At Blueberry, I can go anywhere depending on how we want to model it, I guess, anywhere from, we wouldn't want to be under 6 grams for sure, but 6, 7, 8, 9. But so that study I'll have here in a bit, and then we'll decide. But then also there's scenario 2 and 3, like, okay, give me your, we paid a lot of money for this study. So we're in that position that if that's what we decide to do, we'll be able to do it, which puts me ahead of a lot of other people that you would naturally compare me with. Right. So we'll answer those unanswered questions. Stay tuned. But I'll have the data that I need to make that decision here way before PDAC. Right. And my goal is at PDAC that we'll have everything set that we need. I'm working on this potential other stuff that may or may not happen. But even if we decide it's too dilutive and not make sense, maybe we just roll out with a $5 million program this year, and that'll be, it's going to be up to my shareholders and see what it is that they want to do. So,
Right.
like I say, in a half a day, I can talk to 60% of the stock very easily. Right. So,
and so far, because when I started, I meant, I wanted to talk strategy, and so far we've gone down one route, if you will, where it's, you drill it out, and at a certain point, a new mon comes in, or whatever, an SCOT, or whatever. But there's just a bunch of other opportunities, like Red Cliff, for example, right in between SCOT's land holding, right? I mean, to me, that would make, if that would go away, to say it that way, threading lightly here, but if that would be sold or optioned out or whatever it might be, you'd have more money to focus on Scottie Gold.
Sure. That's again, we have a lot of inquiries of people who want to JV in, whether it's Georgia River or in around that Red Cliff area, because we have but I've been really resisting that up until now. And the reason that is because I always thought a major is going to look and go, wow, 7 past producing mines. Look at that district scale land package. I don't want to sterilize the exploration potential, because I think with the resource or the potential resource that we can show, those bigger companies also go, and I can explore for the next 15 years, because there's so much untapped potential. And if you look at in around that red cliff on one of our maps, there's a whole bunch of red dots. And I don't know if people quite understand what those red dots are. Those red dots are called showings, which are documented mineral occurrences, nothing to do with assay, but they're just an anomalous mineral occurrences. And it took us about 5 years to put that big piece of land together, but it has not been owned in a big piece like that in 50 years, right? And so there's a system there, but we just can't go drill it, because if I'm giving, 100 gram, 15% of my holes are over 100 gram meters. So I'm laying out 100 gram meter hole after 100 gram meter hole. Nobody cares. So why would I go drill somewhere that takes a little bit more money, that I'm still just, it's a real question. Although we really have done some soul searching, going, maybe we don't drill anything, but let's just go drill all. We've got 5 or 6 other wonderful targets that we have drill permits for, and maybe that's what the market needs. Maybe we just go wildcatting for the year 2024, because, and I'm just talking about internal conversations. I'm not saying I'm doing this, but just so you know that we've looked at all possibilities. You go, we believe right now with a market cap of $50 million, what people see at Scottie, going, okay, there's value there. Like, if you going to compare me to anybody else, there's value, there's untapped value, latent value there. So why don't we just go, maybe people want to see, maybe we could dream bigger, 5 million ounces, and then barracks, and, and so I just need to go drill a whole bunch of other stuff. But it's really a tough decision, because the money's so expensive, right? I'm giving up hard-earned deposit that my shareholders have paid for, and to hold on to Blueberry, to kind of go, hey, do we take a little bit of that and go gambling? I mean, it's truly my shareholders' money. And so I go, we know that it's worth more than $50 million, and just, it's just, when do we realize that? Forget the noise of the market going like this, but when it comes to the sale of a project, we feel very comfortable that we're worth a lot more than $50 million today, and we'll get paid with our patience, and as long as we don't try and color out side the lines. And so that's what, it's a balancing act. There's no real one answer. I mean, I'm wrong. I think I was wrong to drill 20,000 meters in 2023, or maybe I wasn't, because some of the attention we're getting is like, we almost doubled the envelope of Blueberry, and we've pushed it down to 500 meters now, right? We've got the 1.5 kilometers of strike. We did test that other 600 meters. It's a little bit more complicated, because it just gets all diked up, but it hasn't deterred us. Now, again, we put very few holes, because you got to go slowly when you're doing exploration. And then we found some things that were big surprises, and that are pretty exciting. So, it's just about it's a tough one to manage right now, Antonio. It really is. But I think we just keep doing exactly what we've been doing. I'll be able to tell the market a couple, 3 weeks. Right. And the decision is going to be to protect the shareholders that have supported us thus far. And because we're probably in better shape than a lot of the other companies, because of that wonderful shareholder support that we have.
And that is a strategy that I intended on talking about, because what changes the sentiment here on the market? Like, are you completely at the mercy of the market? And if not, would it take, some bonanza type of hole to get the market's attention? Or do you think the MRE that you're targeting for 2024 is a thing that sort of switches the direction? Is this something you can do as a company?
Sure. Of course, if I could go wildcat some big intercept, I mean, I would. Of course I would. That's the dream of all of us. But is it prudent now to go hunting like that? Because these things, cost $1 million, right? It's still an awful lot of money. If I want to go do a heli setup, build a pad, you can't drill. I think a lot of mistakes that I've seen, and I have, and it's quite funny. In 2019, I did 2,000 meter drill program on 3 different targets. I look at that now and go, oh my God, I could have been over right there and then. and not because Thomas isn't a great geologist and we didn't pit. That's not enough meters, like even for one target. What I've learned in seeing other companies, run on shoestring budgets, of which I did, but if I was so lucky I hit on all three of those targets, but it's easy. You could miss. Really good teams drill 2,000 meters. You don't find a mine with only 2,000 meters, right? And so, to kind of go wildcatting, just drilling one hole. I mean, you got to drill four, and depending on the different types of deposits, but or do we just have confidence, button it up? We've got a deposit. We'll add value to that deposit, but in the less dilutive way. Now, what would it mean if I took royalty money, right? It would break my heart to do so, but maybe I do that.
But you just bought the royalty back, didn't you?
2 years ago, yeah.
Right. Well, so why would you go taking back?
Why did I buy that? Because it's I've been touting, gives me optionality, and here we are at 18 cents. Do we want to issue shares at 18 cents and give somebody? You can go buy my stock in the market right now on the backs of all of us that have worked so hard for 5 years to get where we were, and very happy where we are. So I don't issue any shares. So what would I look like if I called me a 300 million share company, and I've got 5 now, and if I did a royalty deal, let's say, just pick a number, $10 million that I could get, all of a sudden I'm a junior with $16 million in the bank, $15 million. Does that make me look strong? Does that, I would rather not sell a royalty, but, anyways, these are things that we discuss and go, okay, it's good for my shareholders. It belongs to my shareholders. The royalty free status and what I maybe initially thought, you just got to compromise sometimes. And so these are things that we're playing with, and we're in discussions. Everyone knows we're in discussions with those sorts of things right now. And so we'll see. And then what kind of a program do you do? Even if I had $20 million, I don't know. And you don't know either. Like, do I put 4 drills and just keep drilling the heck out of it? Or, 2024 people are scared of because it's an election year, right? And election years probably don't work out great for hard asset guys, right? But again, it doesn't make sense where gold is right now, given all the data that there is and such. So I don't think any of us know, and and I consume a lot of content, and I respect everybody's opinion, but at the end of the day, everybody's sucking their thumb. They don't know because everybody's kind of can't explain why are we 2050 right now with, jobs report this week, just go holding interest rates steady, and, they might raise them. Who knows? Gold should be 1,700 right now. If we all think that we're smart, and even with the narrative we talk of why gold's going to go to 21 or 2,300 on the same premise, you're going, it doesn't make sense why gold's held in so well. It's central bank buying is the answer to that question, for sure. But the generalists don't appreciate that, at all. They're not even thinking of it. We've got kids trading call options on ETFs on their phones, right? I mean, I've been in the financial markets for a very long time, and I never would touch those things, but this is a normal thing because the kids got their phone and like, oh, extremely overbought, extremely oversold, judging on whatever model that some guy put the data into. And, how many emails do I get, and guys showing me, oh, I'm going, that's great, it's cool. But just understand, it's some guy just built a model, and he's not, you can't just figure out the stock market. No one ever has. So I find that different than old school due diligence that I had to do 30 years ago. Right.
True.
So
for you specifically, that basically means that in the upcoming month or so, you're talking about closing the financing, reporting possibly rest of the grades from 2023, and then also announcing exploration plans. That's sort of a aggressive timeline. What is it, about a news release a week here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I would like to, when I go to PDAC, I'll really solidify what we do for 2024. I will close off the financing this week, get the news out. No, those are all easy. The news release is written for the date. I just got to get it out. We put one out last week, and we tried dripping every week and didn't work, but at least we gave our shareholders a chance, and and it'll be the final, and it's a blueberry hole. And so, you know, just consistent with what we've been doing, which is great. You
Okay.
know, I've been in great contact with all my shareholders. You know, I just need that report from the resource report, and then I'll be able to articulate, okay, what do we want to do? And it's just a decision. We'll make the right decision. I just, you know, there's about 2 different scenarios I see right now. Yeah.
Okay, so it's those news releases, then PDAC, and then what? What comes after? What comes after that?
Well, you know, we probably could be on site earlier this year than we have in the past 5 years. And the reason is there's no snow up north. We live in the Golden Triangle, has you know, historically an awful lot of snow, and but this year it's the least amount of snow I've seen in 15 years. I mean, I used to run the avalanche program at Comess. I know snow, or used to know snow. So I imagine I can get on site earlier, but if we're only going to do 10,000 meter program, I can kind of, you know, it's not going to be a rush scenario this year. Unfortunately, if the market was great, I'd have 6 drills on it. I have 80,000 meters of targeting.
Right. Well, but what's earlier? Is that July or June?
Oh, no, June. You know, when I took the company over in 2016, I was driving up to site in early June. Didn't have to push any snow. For the last few years, I had to, you know, D8s and 300 excavators. We're clearing avalanche slopes just to get to the site for July 1st. I suspect I'll be able to just drive right up there in June, early June this year. And so it'll be save some money on snow removal and getting that camp, and never being, you know, it's really tough, you know, because we try and get so much work done in a short period of time. It's like herding cats. All of a sudden go from like 2 or 3 people to there's 25 people, there's camps, there's everything going on, which creates a little chaos. If I can actually ease into that, it actually makes things just a little bit easier to deal with. So I think that's, you know, we'll have a comfortable year no matter what. I just can't see us going 30,000 meters. I'd love to. It'd break, you know, but just don't see it unless something changes dramatically in the next 3 weeks. Because I can't. The other thing, Antonio, is I can't. And let's say the market turns, and I can't do it, nor can anybody else. Is May, and all of a sudden equities are on, and people are, oh yeah, we like this, and you can all raise money. Well, you just can't put a program together in a month. I mean, the people and the planning and the cut, it takes a little bit to operate all these things. And we, you know, one of the reasons our drill costs are so cheap is that we operate. You know, we don't use a series of a whole bunch of contractors. Obviously, we have drill contractors and such, and local contractors, but we operate. You just can't decide, you know, a month before that I can throw 3 more drills on, because there won't be drill crews. They're not available. So you got to kind of, you know, you make our decision right now, and we'll see what we do. I mean, we'll still have one of the bigger programs for my weight class. There's no question about that. Right? For whatever snack bracket you'd put Scottie, $50 million market caps, or, you know, for junior exploration, we'll have one of the bigger programs.
Right. Okay.
I see a lot of guys pulling back. You know, we're in Vancouver, and it's shocking for a lot of good teams out there. They can't raise any money. You know.
Absolutely. I see that a whole lot out there. So suppose you got to get through the PDAC curse, and then go through PDAC, see if that really gives something, but we'll see what happens there. But it sounds to me like we have to be speaking in some 4 weeks-ish, just so you can lay out the plans again, maybe something along those lines. But I think I've gone through most of the stuff that I wanted to sort of get a feel off the bat. I just wanted to have a longer conversation. You know, I have spoken a couple of times during conferences before, but it's never really at length. So thank you for that. What am I forgetting to ask you though? You talk to a lot of. I mean, you talk to Ross Beatty. Heck, what's Ross Beatty asking you when it comes down to this?
Well, it's really generous. Like, he's not out there investing in junior exploration companies. I helped him out with some other initiatives outside of Scottie. He has recognized that we've done a heck of a job of not being rewarded. And I think he's just like, okay, here's a couple $1 million, Brad. You're safe, right? Quit sweating. He knew the exact situation we were in. Yeah, so I think it's more of a relationship thing there. I mean, obviously he's not throwing that kind of money around for fun. We did do technicals, but he's just recognizing how tough it is, and so I'm feeling very blessed about that because he had a small position before. He was kind of supporting us, and so he really was an angel because I was, in November I knew I was getting short of money as you mentioned as you looked at my financials. We were going, ooh, and I was going, okay, do I write another check, which I swore I'd never put any more money. And I'm $1 million, my kid's money into this story, and I haven't made any. So he just kind of been helping us out. It's not his full-time job. He's got Equinox. He's really doing some philanthropy stuff. So, but he's good encouragement. He's been making nice introductions. And of course, it doesn't hurt when between him and Michael Gray kind of putting their, he's not putting his name, we're not publishing his name all over the place. But he does own 5% of the company. And then with Michael Gray writing us up, I think you guys should try, for your listeners is, that's a pretty good report. It made me blush. What Michael Gray put 11-page report out at the beginning of the year. And then another thing from just looking at the asset and doing due diligence is we did a video a couple months ago with Thomas, and it's called the Golden Triangle University. I don't know if you saw it, but it's not a rah Scottie thing, but it's more regional geology and the exploration process on how we got to where we were. And it's kind of geared for a first-year geology student. So you don't have to be super technical, but it gives you more technical take that even you and I can understand. I encourage everyone to go and watch that, and it will make you a better investor for not just if you like Scottie or not, but just kind of see, I think Francis McDonald and the Kenorland crew, they were doing some pretty good videos a few years ago trying to educate people. And I think Thomas really hit it out of the park. And the feedback we're getting from it is very flattering and overwhelming. So that's there for people to see, and you can kind of see that. Then you might get a better idea for the blue sky potential, because really we're only drilling like 3-4% of the land total, and we just got to get out on more. You just can't run too fast. You can't change the market. You just got to make sure you don't color outside the lines when they're tough times like this.
Yeah.
I wish I had 6 drills on. I would love to. Oh my God, I just loved, I mean, SCOT 6-7 years ago, they had 6 drills going. I think it was just right when Derek White was taking over from John Toffin, but that's 160,000 meters. I'm like, oh my gosh, would I love to do that because of what we've learned, and we're ready for that now. Before I couldn't get money and I had no drill targets. Now I can't get money and I have drill targets. The drill targets are the harder of the things to come up with. So I've got lots of them. So
I appreciate it, Brad. It's a good overview. I appreciate it, and it sounds like we'll be speaking soon. So thank you so much for investing your time with me.
Thank you very much for your time and listening to me ramble on. I know I talk a lot.
All right, moving up the market cap again, but just a little bit. Still sticking to gold, still sticking to BC. Next up is Ewan Webster from Thesis Gold. That's TAU on the Ventures Exchange. I'm not doing a full company overview because Ewan was on the channel but a few weeks ago. So make sure to link that somewhere if you want to learn more about the company, which you should. But in a nutshell, gold exploration with 2 assets that were merged not too long ago in BC. One of them has a PEA on it with a 12-year LOM on an open pit and an average annual production of 163 I was going to say 163 ounces. Hopefully it's a little bit more than that. So 163,000 ounces. But this is basically just the beginning because their second project is expected to join the resource estimate in a couple of months. And so last week there was some news around the company, specifically some of the some intercepts, so some assay results. Some of the better intercepts included 60 meters of call it 4.5 grams per ton of gold that was drilled at that ranch project, on which Thesis is expecting to have an MRE out this year. So yeah, that's what we're talking about here today. Ewan, what is this news release? Why is it significant? What does it change for the company?
Hi, Antonio. Yeah, so this release, as you noted, the headline hole there, 60 meters at 4.5 grams, fantastic result in a step out hole to the southeast of what is the Thesis 2 zone. So just a little bit of context around this zone and what it's part of. It's within this much larger, right now, 1.5 kilometer defined, what we call the Thesis structural corridor. And it's made up of 3 zones of Thesis 2, Thesis 3 in the middle, and then the bingo zone at the northern end. And collectively, these were historically isolated zones of mineralization, kind of pods of mineralization. And I think what we've demonstrated over the last year is that that's not the case. These are, in fact, part of a much larger structurally controlled system. And we've been kind of extending that mineralization over the past couple of years. And this press release's results, just following up on that again, extending mineralization to the southeast with that headline hole. And really that whole corridor is maybe several kilometers long, but 200 to 300 meters wide in places, and is made up of just a lot of big faults. And it's these faults that are essentially acting as the conduits to mineralization. So as a result of that, you get lots of parallel zones of mineralization, and that's what was demonstrated here again. And this press release intercepted multiple zones at the Thesis 2 and Thesis 3 zones with very strong mineralization stepping out. And, I think the key takeaway really is that excellent mineralization continues to exceed expectations here with grades like that, and a lot of room to continue expanding this area in future years. And what I would add as well is that the remaining outstanding balance of drill holes from that Thesis structural corridor and the Ranch project for last season's drill program are all remaining at the bingo zone at the northern end of this structural corridor. And based on the visuals, anticipating some more really strong near surface mineralization.
So in a nutshell, your wait for it, thesis is being proven. I'm sorry, I can't help it at this stage. I need to seek professional help, but that's what's it's interesting because looking at the I pulled out the drill table here at Thesis 2. You sort of have hole 1, 2, and 3, maybe even hole 4. They don't have much to show in terms of grade. Then hole 5 hits a few pockets of that very high grade. Seeing that headline number is in here in that hole 5, 60 meters of 4.5 grams per ton. But also 47 meters of 5.6 grams, 19 meters of over 10 grams. So we're talking really high grade. And even a few narrow sort of still, bonanza grade hits. And then the next hole, so hole 6, which on the map appears southwest from that hole 5, that's back to low grade. As a non-geo, that's pretty much the only thing I can do is notice that that's happening, but I have no idea what that means. So maybe talk to me about that.
Sure. And great observation. And I think, part of our project this year was kind of testing some ideas and trying to target near surface mineralization and work out what the controls on the Thesis 2 zone were. So, these holes were all really testing the bounds of mineralization and specific targets. So, for example, that headline hole was a 30-meter step out on results that we'd had last year. So, point being, trying to extend mineralization. And Thesis 2 zone, and this applies to the whole Thesis corridor because it is this big, hundreds of kilometer long structural corridor that's hundreds of meters wide and made up of lots of faults that basically, for the most part, trend northwest. You get complexity in, where that gold is. And offsetting that northwest trend, we have other north-south faults and northeast faults. So really, it's a bit of a jigsaw, and we're trying to put it back together. So to your point about the hole to the south, we basically knew going into this and drilling that hole that it probably wouldn't hit anything, because if you look, and we put the ground magnetics on the figure there, and the ground magnetics have been our best exploration tool because what it does is a fantastic job of delineating those faults, essentially. So where you see breaks, even if you're non-technical, where you see breaks in the color or changes in the color, that effectively represents where there's a fault plane, and it's the faults that control the mineralization, but also move it around. That hole to the south, one step out again from the headline hole, you can see that there's a structure that comes through there, a fault, and we knew the mineralization would probably be offset. So much so that we drilled that hole as part of really our due diligence because we have to. But stepping out from that to the southwest, you can see that kind of general trend continues from red to blue. And the magnetics, and that is presumably the offset extension of the Thesis 2 zone. And we've already got the pads built down there to continue testing that mineralization to the south. We just didn't get to drill in the last season. On top of that, we've also got, and I think we highlighted some of the targets in the press release as well, that share the same geophysical response within that larger structural corridor, just further to the west, and we've got pads built to test those anomalies as well. So, very much a starting point. Sure, there's some weaker mineralization in there, but the more that we drill, we're finding some spectacular mineralization, we're finding some weaker mineralization, but it's all just part of the learning curve for us and delineating where that mineralization goes and understanding the fault network. And, from the point that we acquired this project back in 2020 and the first few programs we've worked or we drilled on the project over the last few years, we've really got a good understanding now of that fault network, what controls the mineralization, the orientation, the structures that are mineralized. And that's in part what's led to a huge part of our success on the ranch project. And I fully believe that's just going to continue going forward.
Right. So well, basically translated to my 5-year-old brain, it basically means that you're zoning in. I mean, this is helping you zone in so that you know where to drill next time.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly
good.
it.
Good. Okay. Coincidentally, hole 3 at the other target, that's to the northeast from Thesis 2, and so this is Thesis 3 that I'm talking about. Well, hole 6 is again where the high grade is, but it's over sort of shorter intervals, if I'm reading this correctly. What's the what's happening at Thesis 3? That's the next. Oh, I said hole 3. I meant hole 6, right? So hole 6. What's happening at Thesis 3 right now? What does this hole tell you?
I'm sorry, I just pulled up the press release as well. So that's hole 6 is 0.65 at just under 14 grams.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Narrow,
Yeah.
so
Okay,
high grade, but narrow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just going to be one of these little, to me, that's not a real zone. It's just, that's going to be a little spurt of like a little offset fault system with probably a pretty narrow zone in it that is concentrated the fluids, concentrated the grade, and you have a nice little discrete structure there. Great, but that's not what we're targeting. We're targeting the much larger bulk zones of mineralization, and that's just with these faults. You get lots of little splays coming off them, and that will just represent one of those, but it's not the main conduit for fluids.
Okay. Is that because I was going to ask that because I was thinking, like, how come? I mean, they seem to be on the same fault zone, if you will, very comparable ground magnetics too, judging by the map. Well, and that, I mean, it gets me thinking, like, why are they different? Shouldn't they be the same thing? Thesis 2 and Thesis 3.
I mean, in terms of like styles of alteration, grades, they are very similar, and magnetic response to your point, they are very similar. But in terms of intricate details, just because there's a lot of faults in there, it makes it a little more complicated and complex, and those zones get moved around a little bit, and because they are spatially, distinct from one another. Then, if you think back to how these deposits form, basically, you've got fluids coming up here and there, and they might have a slightly different characteristic to the fluids, and some of them may have gold pulses where you're not getting a few hundred meters away, and then you get multiple pulses here and there in places, and you have fluids leak up other discrete structures, and that's why you get variability. I mean, and that's just natural, I think, for all gold systems. But the key thing here is that, and as we've talked about, it's part of a much larger corridor where there's a ton of fluid pathways, and there's the potential for significant amount of ounces over well over kilometer and a half at this point. And we're just looking for the concentrated zones along that. And I'd say at the moment, we've only tested about half of the width of the corridor. And that's partly because we're topography constrained at the moment, because, that fault, what it does is create just basically a natural valley because it's a nice erosional feature. So we're drilling on a bench into the fault from one side. And the topography on the other side makes it a little more challenging to drill. But so we've basically got still half of this structure to test, looking for multiple parallel zones in addition to what we already have. So not only can we continue extending this along strike, but the opportunities there to increase the width of it, which adds ounces, reduces strip for future mining scenarios. So I'm very positive on this thesis corridor is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I could tell. Has this news release, these assay results, have they changed your well, not changed, because when we spoke about a month ago, you didn't exactly know how many meters you were planning and exactly where those meters were going to go. Yeah. Do you have a better perspective now after this news release?
No, I don't think so. I mean, these results hit as expected, and the strong mineralization throughout that thesis corridor, I think that's going to continue. As I said, as we chatted about a few weeks ago, really it's just the ranch project that's going to see all of that future exploration drilling, and some of that will be in the thesis corridor, some of that will be at our new kind of emerging targets, the JK zone, the Steve zone, and hopefully a number of other targets that haven't been drill tested yet. So no concrete plans for the summer yet, but I don't think those have changed based on this release.
Okay. Because I mean, there was not maybe, but you said you expected whatever came back from the north of that Thesis 3 zone, you basically expected that to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, again, it's one of these north-south, northeast structures that's coming through there, offsetting that mineralization. So not a shocker by any stretch. There's just full disclosure. We like to release all the results, and that's just helping build, for us, that's helping build up that structural framework to help with future targeting.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. Yeah. Well, that's clear. I think it's a brief news release, but an important one here, especially with these grades. So it's good that we got an update on it. You also bought some shares after this news was released, and I'd asked you about that before last time, but you said that there wasn't really much room for that in your budget at the time. So what happened? I mean, am I making you sleep on the couch? Why the change of heart?
No, I think it was a great question, and I think I probably wasn't really prepared for it. Kind of fumbled my way through and trying to respond to it, and but I think what it did do is I had some of our very, very long-term supportive retail shareholders reach out to me, and just we had a good discussion with them. But their general sentiment was, hey, it would be good if you could buy on the market. Just understanding I don't have a ton of capital, but it would help demonstrate that you are kind of supportive of the project, and also putting your money where your mouth is, and also among all that, I think if anybody's watched any of your videos or any content that I ever do, it's pretty clear that I couldn't be more behind this project and truly believe in its potential. But this is just one other step in that process. And so, I had a good discussion with a number of shareholders, and their feedback was, hey, we think you should buy some stock on the market. And that's my job to a certain extent, is to talk to shareholders, take the feedback, good or bad, and, evaluate that. And, I think they were right. So waited till we had that news out, and then bought some shares on the market. And I think what you'll see is that I'm going to continue to pick up shares on the market here and there when I can.
Good. Awesome. It's a positive change. I like it. I like that also you're thinking about it. It's obviously also a balance, because obviously the market also always wants you to be buying in the open market, but they also want you to come in on financing and help finance the company, and they don't want you to have a paycheck, and they don't want you to spend on marketing, but they want the stock price to be good. So it's a lot of these things that, like, how do you balance it? You're doing a good job. I like the positive change of heart there, and Good. Yeah, I don't think I have any other questions. But I'm probably forgetting stuff. What am I forgetting to ask you here?
No, I think we nailed it. A good discussion around the press release. I mean, obviously, I take things to the technical end a fair bit, and I get feedback from shareholders as well that I shouldn't be overly technical, but I guess that's just my natural background. But I mean, I think this just feeds, just to kind of summarize, I guess, I think this just feeds into it's just one stepping stone along the way. And I think I mentioned that maybe in my quote in the press release, but it's one zone at Ranch. It's one step towards the new resource, and the resource is a stepping stone as well. I mean, hopefully you can see from these results and the discussion that we've had today that the thesis corridor has the potential to keep extending at depth, along strike and width, and we have a number of other zones on the Ranch project. So whatever this resource comes out with in a couple of months, I mean, it's a starting point for, globally for lawyers and Ranch, but really all the blue skies coming from the Ranch project. And I think we're going to be able to demonstrate, hey, we've got X ounces here on the ground, but there's a very clear pathway to many more ounces in the near term. And I think there's very few companies that come out and say that, especially when they wrap economics around the project. I mean, a lot of companies will never get there. We already have a PEA. It's only going to get better because of the results that we're seeing in that press release, among others that from last year's program, bringing in the Ranch near surface mineralization, bringing in the underground on the Lawyers project. So we've taken an economic study. We're hopefully going to make that a lot better and probably kind of early Q3 timeframe in a new updated PEA. And again, that's going to be a starting point. I mean, I think this project is going to be one of the top assets in North America. And over the course of the next 6 to 8 months, I hope to demonstrate that's the case.
Awesome. Well, you and I appreciate your time again. Thank you so much for stopping by, and we'll do this again soon. When you have your next release. When's that next release coming, by the way? What do you think?
Hopefully soon. In the next couple of weeks, I'd say. And well, as I said, those are going to be results from the bingo zone.
Yeah.
And based on the visuals, looking like strong mineralization.
Good. Well, I'll make sure to follow up on those with a couple of annoying questions as well. But yeah, thanks so much for doing this.
Perfect. Thanks, Antonio.
All right, last but not least for this week, a stock that's for a change not at its 52-week low, and that's Skyharbour Resources. I've done a few interviews with Jordan over the years, so no need for a 10-minute rant on my end. The stock is listed on the Ventures Exchange under the ticker symbol SYH. This is, as most of you would know, a uranium explorer and a project generator, strictly focused on the Athabasca Basin in Canada, and they're boasting over 520,000 hectares of land holding over there, a lot of which is being explored by Skyharbour's partners under joint ventures. So those could be companies like Denison, Rio Tinto, Orano, even some of those companies are also large shareholders of the of Skyharbour, but also a bunch of smaller names that you might also be familiar with, like Azincourt, Tesdale, and so on and so forth. But they're also running their own exploration program this year, the largest one actually since the inception of the company. So that's going to be kind of the focus of the discussion here today. Again, no full company overview since I've spoken to Jordan a few times, but I'll link it somewhere in the description if people want more of an in-depth interview with Jordan. Because Jordan, what I'm rushing here to hear from you basically is well, a lot of things, but let's maybe start that way. What have you done for shareholders lately? What's happened with Skyharbour over the recent months?
Yeah, well, look, it's been a very busy 6 months for us, and in particular in the last few months. So we've recently announced the commencement of a fairly major, actually our largest individual single season drill program at our two co-flagship Russell Lake and Moore Lake projects. So these two projects, again, are advanced stage exploration assets that do either host small resources or high-grade uranium. It's basically all the ground situated between the McArthur River Mine, the Key Lake Mill, and Denison's Wheeler River project. There's a road that services the McArthur River Mine that runs right up through our Russell Lake project. There's an exploration camp that we're inheriting as we earn into Russell Lake. Russell Lake, again, this can all be dug up in the last interview, but this was a project that we did a deal on with Rio Tinto, bringing them in as a large shareholder. Likely could be a project partner as we earn in. We do have an option to earn up to 100% of this project. So there's infrastructure there, which brings our drill costs down at both Russell and the adjacent Moore Lake project. Moore Lake, we own 100% of, unencumbered, and our drilling costs now with this infrastructure, access to this infrastructure, is sub all-in $300 Canadian a meter, even approaching closer to about 250 all in a meter. So that's, by comparison, probably some of the lowest cost all-in drilling for exploration in the Athabasca Basin, certainly compared to other smaller cap names. So we get a lot of bang for our buck at both of these co-flagship projects. So the 8,000 meter winter program is going to consist of 5,000 meters, which we've just commenced at Russell, and we're and then following that another 3,000 meters at Moore Lake. Specifically at Russell, we're following up on the success that we had in the first drill program that we carried out there last year, where we intersected some of the strongest zones of uranium mineralization at the project, and what's called the Grayling target area. It's a group of conductors, multi-kilometer long corridor that's the western side is the extension of uraniferous conductors from Denison's adjacent Wheeler River project. Again, Denison's one of our largest corporate shareholder and a strategic partner of Skyharbour. Their president and CEO Dave Cates is on our board, so we work closely with them and their geological team, and this has really helped with, in this program, target selection and refinement. So this Grayling target area, which really was the subject of most of the drilling last year. It's mineralized, it's multi-kilometer long, and this year we've refined two targets and picked two targets, one called the Fork target, which is on the western side of this broader Grayling target area. A very interesting target, as it's close, some of it actually is right under the power lines. And so this has disrupted the geophysical signature. So there isn't a great known geophysical signature there. We know now, though, after months of refining this target, that there's a pretty strong conductive corridor that runs right under it, although it was masked by the power line. So a target that really hasn't seen much drilling. We're going to go in there and drill a few holes. It's a highly prospective target based on what we're seeing around it. Again, any success there would constitute a new greenfields discovery, a very exciting prospect, obviously, in a $100+ uranium market. So the Fork target will be the first target we drill test. We're then going to move the rig over and test what's called the Grayling East Zone, as the name implies. This is the eastern extension of this multi-kilometer long conductive corridor. And then eventually we are planning to test what's called the M Zone extension, which is just up to the north, a few kilometers from this, call it, main Grayling target area. And this is an intriguing target because what we see here is some historical drilling, not a lot, mineralization at the target, but it's the western extension of, again, uraniferous conductors, fertile conductors that trend on from the adjacent Wheeler River project. So we're going to go put a few holes into that target area. The other interesting thing with the M Zone extension is it lines up with cross-cutting structures, regional structures that are associated with Denison's two big deposits, the Phoenix and the Griffin deposits, which are several kilometers to the west of the property boundary at Russell. So again, I think the top picks from a target perspective. All of these targets are road accessible. So again, that brings our drilling costs down. If we're fortunate to make a major new discovery, that obviously will be hugely beneficial, having the proximity of the road, the power, and the camp that we have there. And so we'll complete an initial 5,000 meters or so at Russell. We're then planning to drill 3,000 meters at our adjacent Moore Lake project. And this is the first time in our company's history that we're going to be co-advancing two projects. Moore Lake, as we've talked about, is the most advanced stage project in our portfolio. We've been actively advancing it since we acquired it in 2016. first drill program in 2017 intersected some of actually the best zone of mineralization at the project, including 21% U3O8 over 1.5 meters. That was within 6% over 6 meters. We then were successful in discovering a new high-grade pod or lens along strike from this main Maverick zone, and we called that the Maverick East zone, and the discovery hole there back in 2017 and through 2018 was it consisted of just over 9% over 1.5 meters. So some very high grade mineralization, relatively shallow too. That's important. It's within 270 meters of surface. The unconformity is relatively shallow, which potentially makes this interesting through the lens of ISR or Sabre down the road, something that we're looking at a little more closely internally. But the plan for this 3,000 meters is to go right back into that main Maverick high-grade zone where we haven't drilled there really since the 2017-2018 program. We think that there is still expansion potential at this main zone, and we're working on a resource estimate, so this will go part and parcel with that as well. We're then planning to move the rig and test some regional targets that are mineralized, including the Grid 19 target, which is about 10 kilometers to the northeast of this Maverick corridor, host to several high-grade zones. So there's still a lot of blue sky potential at Moore Lake. We haven't done a lot of work there in the last couple of years, primarily because we did this transaction with Rio on Russell, and that was the focus. And at Russell, it's worth noting too that we'll be complete the initial 51% earn-in. So we have the option of continuing to earn in. We don't have the obligation, and so that 51% we'll have completed that by the end of this winter program, and at that point we'll elect either to keep earning up to 70% and then potentially to 100, or lock in a joint venture with Rio Tinto. So a lot going on with this initial winter drill campaign, drilling both projects, relatively inexpensive drilling, going back into some high grade zones, but most importantly, we're testing, what we feel to be the best, most highly prospective targets. And again, I really can't think of anything more exciting than announcing a new high grade discovery in a $100 uranium price environment. We haven't seen that in many, many years. And I think we're in a great position to do that here this winter. We're fully funded and fully permitted for this program. We have just over $9 million in the treasury. We raised some money late last year in a charity flow through financing at a price of about 77 cents. And that will actually fund us. It was just over $6 million. That'll actually fund us right through 2024. We have a budget for about minimum 15, probably closer to 20,000 meters of drilling across Russell and Moore. We have a little bit of funding going towards a couple of the joint venture projects, including Preston with Orano and potentially East Preston with Azincourt, depending on their program, and then the option partners, as you pointed out, the earn-in option partners. They're required to fund the exploration and the budgets at these earn-in projects, that option projects that they're still actively earning in on. So when we look at the whole year coming up, we're expecting numerous programs. Are obviously multiple drill programs at Russell and Moore throughout the remainder of the year, and we're expecting, of the 7 partner companies, 2 JVs and 5 option partners, we're expecting drill programs and exploration programs from at least 3, maybe 4 of those partner companies in the next 6 to 12 months.
Right. Okay. So in a nutshell, a whole lot going on, and a lot to touch upon there. Well, you mentioned here the best, most prospective targets. That's an interesting point. That's where I sort of want to pick it up, because you've been at it with Skyharbour for over a decade now, I believe. And if there's anyone who knows that exploration is a tough business, then that's definitely you. But talk to me geologically about these targets, because what you have outlined here for 2024, what do you think, why, maybe better said, do you think this gives you that big discovery that you've been chasing all these years? Like, why is it geologically different this time?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, Russell Lake is a new project in our portfolio, right? So we've only had the project for or an option to earn in on the project since late 2022. We didn't start drilling it till a year ago. So we've only really had one drill year to go in there and test the targets. And again, last year we did intersect some of the strongest zones of mineralization. We're still obviously looking for that, that bigger, high grade Athabasca Basin discovery, but at the project. But again, this project is about as strategically located on that main mine trend on the eastern side of the Athabasca Basin as you can get. And we think that after a year of drilling, where we drilled just under 10,000 meters, we got a good lay of the land. We tested a number of targets to get a better idea of where we need to go to vector in on what we think will be, a major new high grade discovery. And that's what we're doing with this drill program, is kind of using all of that historical data and information and knowledge, as well as the data and information that we gathered in the first drill program, to hopefully vector in on this, new high grade discovery. So I think we're in the best position we've ever been in as a company to deliver that new high grade discovery. Now that's just at Russell. At Moore Lake, this project, as I mentioned, we acquired in 2016. We did a little bit of drilling, some drilling in 2017, 2018. We advanced it through numerous drill programs over the course of 5-6 years. We didn't do much work there in 2022, nor last year, as we were focused on Russell. So it was put on the back burner for a couple of years, just because again we had to go in and spend money at Russell, working towards completing the initial 51% earn. And now we're in a position fully funded to work both projects, which is very exciting. And at Moore Lake, again, we've the project's had lots of historical work. We have a very high grade lens of uranium mineralization at the main Maverick zone. We discovered in 2017 another lens at the Maverick East zone. And then in the kind of more recent years, we were drilling the Moore Lake project. The focus was in the underlying basement rocks. And in 2021, we announced a drill hole that represented the best basement hosted mineralization at 6.8% U3O8 over 2 meters. Now this is open at depth. We haven't really gone back in and fully tested that. So there is still a lot of discovery and exploration upside at Moore Lake that we'd like to go and test. So again, I think if you look at the history of the company, the two main projects are the kind of latter half of the company's history, right? Is the first number of years was really in a very challenging uranium market, was really about building up the asset base from scratch. And we've continued to do that, right? We've continued to add projects and stake mineral claims in the Athabasca Basin. We're now by acreage the third largest mineral tenure holder with, as you pointed out, well over 520,000 hectares, or over 1.2 million acres across 25 projects. And these projects have great discovery potential. We're obviously focused at our two main assets, as I just highlighted. These are the two projects that we think we can deliver a near-term discovery at, or continue, in the case of Moore Lake, continue to expand an existing high-grade resource there. Like I said, looking a little bit more closely at down the road, how could you actually get these pounds out of the ground? It's relatively shallow at the Maverick deposit, and it's mostly sandstone hosted currently. Although again, like I said, there is a lot of potential in the underlying basement rock. So we evaluate the projects. We're focused on our two main projects as a result of that. That's where we're spending our money. And then as a part of our prospect generator business, we make sure that the secondary and tertiary projects are being advanced. It's not to say that they aren't as prospective, but in a lot of cases, they just aren't necessarily as advanced, or call it discovery ready, if you will, as our main projects. Now, that being said, and a good segue to some of the news flow that our partner companies have been announcing. Just earlier today, we announced with our partner Tisdale Clean Energy an initial drill program that they're going to be funding and carrying out 1,500 meters at the South Falcon East project. Now, this is a a very interesting project in that it does host a small near-surface uranium resource that again, in $100 uranium price environment becomes much more interesting than 30 or 40 or 50. But the resource is open along strike and at depth. They're going to go in and they're going to try to expand that resource and discover additional zones of mineralization. It's only really been drilled down to about 120 to 130 meters. Skyharbour did a little bit of drilling in 2015 and discovered some higher grade mineralization at depth. So they likely will go in and continue to expand on that. But this is a project that we actually have done some work on in recent years. We've spent money there. It's our largest option agreement. It's just under 22 million in combined project consideration for Tisdale to earn up to 75%, about half of that in exploration funding, the other half in cash and stock. And this is really their first kind of major program that they're carrying out, and they're using our camp at Russell Lake. So there's some operational synergies as well with that program. So that's that project we deem to be an advanced stage project, discovery ready, and as I mentioned, they are looking to go in and expand an existing resource.
I do want to talk about that, and I hope we get to it. But what I also am thinking about is, I guess the focus here is Russell and Moore Lake. So that's something I'm also really interested in, because I'm thinking about step out versus infill. As far as I understand it, Russell mostly step outs and Moore mostly infill drilling. Like, is that how you'd put it?
Not exact. So at Russell, a lot of the historical drilling and work there, because it's a big project, well over 70,000 hectares. And there's lots of conductors and targets, and a lot of it too is the extension of these fertile conductors from adjacent projects like Wheeler River, right? So Hathor did a fair bit of work there in kind of the mid and late 2000s. Rio picked up that when they acquired Hathor, and did a fair bit of work from 2012 to call it 2016. So there wasn't a ton of work carried out from 2016 on to when we acquired it or optioned it from them. But a lot of the drilling there, if you look at it, was fairly widely spaced exploration or reconnaissance drilling, and that's great. It's good to get an understanding of the rocks. But as we both know, one of the reasons these deposits are challenging to discover is because they're relatively small by comparison to other mineral deposits. So to really give yourself the best shot at making a discovery, you need to very much vector in on the deposit. And so I think a lot of that initial work has been done for us with previous operators. And now we are, we're going in, and yes, some of it's still exploratory drilling, if you will, but really what we're doing is we're going in to tighten up drill fence spacings that are widely spaced fences, and going in there and mineralized in a lot of cases, right? We know there's mineralization there, and going in to really, as I like to think of it, any next drill hole could deliver that next big discovery for us. It's a discovery ready project. And so, I'd say step out expansion drilling, it's still exploration drilling in that, if we make a discovery, it's a new discovery, but we're going in there with a lot more data and a lot more confidence in vectoring in on this new discovery. Now at Moore Lake, the drilling at the Maverick deposit or main zone of mineralization, that would be considered either infill or expansion drilling. As there's been a fair bit of drilling there, and really we're just trying to get a good idea of exactly how many pounds are there, the grade. There's this really high grade core that we think can be expanded. So that would be, infill or expansion drilling. And then the other targets that we're going to be testing at Moore Lake would be more exploration drilling.
Yeah. Okay, sure. That makes sense. So would you have one drill operating at each, or how are you going to do that?
We've got one drill operating, and we're going to actually move the rig, just skid it over, as they're relatively in close proximity using winter roads. And so, that's something that we can look at if the market, picks up and there's an appetite for an even larger program. It's flexible. We can look to bring in another rig, but as it stands right now, we're getting really good production from the one rig. So we'll just, we'll move that rig around accordingly and basically drill right through the year.
Right. Okay. So when are you expecting the first assay results to start rolling in?
Yeah, well, look, we just started the program, so depending on lab times, probably it's usually a 4 to 6 week turnaround. So we'll start getting assays within the next month or so, and then yeah, we'll likely have, given the size of the program, multiple releases that come out. The program will probably wrap up sometime in April. We'll go on a quick break then, and then the plan is to go right back in there in the summer and continue drilling right through to freeze up at the end of the year.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so we talked about that. It's probably maybe too early, but when do you think you'll be able to release an MRE on more? Is this year's drilling going to be enough, or are you thinking next year?
Yeah, I think this in fact, like that's it's kind of the main focus for us with the drilling at the main Maverick zone is to just get go right back into that high grade and drill a few holes to see if we can expand that zone for the mineral resource estimate. So yeah, there's been a fair bit of drilling there. It's not the biggest resource, but there's a couple high grade zones there, and it is open. It's wide open pretty much at depth too, right in the basement rocks. I mean, that's something that we talked about last time, and I like to emphasize the fact that yes, there's the high grade zone kind of right at the unconformity, which is the bulk of what would be the resource, but there's good expansion potential into the basement rocks, and again, the unconformities relatively shallow at about ranges between 260 to 280 meters. So there is expansion potential as well. So yeah, so we'll carry out this drilling, and that should be enough for us to put our best foot forward with the resource estimate.
Right. That's at Moore Lake. Russell, I don't assume there's going to be enough drilling this year to do an MRE there.
No, I mean, Russell, look, there could be, but we wanted the goal there is to make a new discovery, right? It's
Right.
widespread mineralization, but it's still at a discovery stage in terms of the project.
Right. Okay. You also picked up some more ground about a month ago or so. So you late last year, you staked some ground, and then early this year, I believe you picked up some more ground. So it seems like that's going to remain an active part of your business throughout this bull market as well.
Yeah, it is, and in fact, we've continued to stake, and we're continuing to build the project portfolio, the land holding that we have in the basin. I will say it's getting more challenging and more competitive to go and do that. A lot of the low-lying fruit's been plucked, but we're continuing to add inventory to our prospect generator business. We've had a fair bit of interest in recent weeks and months on new companies coming in that are looking for uranium projects and assets in the basin. So I think we can continue to build up our prospect generator business. We've got the 7 partner companies currently. 2 of them have completed their earn-ins, Orano at Preston and Azincourt at East Preston. Orano's planning for the first time in 3 years, planning some exploration at the Preston project, which we're planning to participate in. So that'll generate some news flow. Azincourt's announced plans for a drill program at East Preston. They've done a great job advancing that project. We're a minority interest holder in both properties. They're the 2 operators, and those projects are over by NextGen and Fission and on the western side of the Athabasca Basin. So it gives us some exposure to that emerging district in the basin. And then we've got 5 option earn-in partners, one of which Valor Resources, ASX listed company, is nearing completion of their 80% earn-in at our Hook Lake project. So likely lock in the JV there. And then the other 4 partner companies, we've got, as I mentioned earlier, Tisdale Clean Energy planning a drill program, winter drill program at our South Falcon East project. And then adjacent to them, North Shore Energy is another partner company of ours. We're very excited for them to get to work at the Falcon project, which is just adjacent to South Falcon East. Historical drilling there has shown widespread mineralization across a number of sets of conductors. So very good discovery potential there. They too are planning an initial 1,500 to 2,000 meter drill program that'll commence here this winter. Again, staging out of our camp at Russell Lake. So there's going to be several thousand meters combined of drilling at the Falcon and South Falcon East projects funded by North Shore and Tisdale. And then we've got our Man Lake project currently under option to Basin Uranium, as well as our Yurchison project currently under option to Madero. That's the existing project generator portfolio that we have a lot going on, as I said, within that. But with this additional staking, we've done a couple of other property deals. We've got 15 or 16 projects that we own 100% of that we're currently and actively looking to seek partners on. One of which, South Dufferin, which is a project that we acquired 100% of last year, just under a year ago from Denison. It's a drill-ready project. It's on strike to a large high-grade deposit owned by Cameco, the Centennial deposit, which is basically the group of conductors hosting that deposit trend right down onto the South Dufferin project. It's relatively shallow. They're relatively shallow targets, and so we're getting a lot of interest on a project like that. We have a few drill-ready projects that are available for option, and I think we'll be able to lock in a few new partners this year to add to that prospect generator business. It's been a nice boon for our company over the last several years. It's allowed us to not have to raise as much money. We haven't had to raise a hard dollar in a private placement or in a financing since August of 2020. We've had cash in stock coming in from these partner companies, and then they fund the exploration up to the point where they complete the earn-in and we form a JV, and then it's pro rata. So yeah, it's a lot of exploration dollars that have come in from these other companies to advance these other projects.
That's something that I've been thinking about when I see your news releases coming out, because you're unique in your approach to prospect generating, especially in the uranium space and in the Athabasca Basin. And I just sort of wanted to get your thoughts on this bit as to how you think insiders, or how insiders actually think, insiders in the uranium space, obviously. How do you guys think about taking advantage from the recent run up in the prices? And just generally, what does that mean for you in general? What do you think is the best way to take advantage from what's happening in the uranium space? Like, do you go heavy on the prospect generating, or do you really zone in and focus more on the exploration side?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'd say we try to employ a hybrid model, right? And we try to do both, right? So I'd say obviously as the uranium price moves higher, the ideal situation is at a wholly owned project, you make a big discovery, right? So we want to, and there's more capital available for exploration. Your cost of capital goes down, and so hence why we're ramping up at not just Russell or more, but both of them. But it also does generate more interest from new companies potentially coming into the basin, or from existing companies, uranium companies that are looking to expand their portfolios in the basin. So it does kind of play into both parts of the business nicely, and we can do both, right? Bring in and expand our prospect generator business by bringing in partners, while expanding and being more aggressive at our main focus at the two co-flagship Russell and Moore Lake projects. And another kind of note on that too, as we see the market, the uranium price, I think again at $100, just over $100 a pound. I still think there's a lot of runway for higher prices. I mean, when we look at the historical price of this commodity in inflation-adjusted terms, is well over $200 a pound back in the mid and late 70s, and again cracked about $200 a pound in today's dollars back in 2007. And so we're still about halfway there, right? Even though it has moved quite a bit in the last year, and it's not going to go straight up. It'll likely be volatile, but I think that's the opportunity for those that haven't haven't looked at the sector yet or don't have any exposure, I still think there's a lot of upside here. What's really exciting, I think, though, from an investor standpoint, when you look at, for example, 06, 07, and that run up. So from, let's say, 2003 to 2007, and you look at the relative performance of Cameco, the largest mining company and producer, versus the lowest 50% market cap companies, the lower half of the sector. Cameco outperformed for most of that 2003 to 2007 period. And I think, in 2006, Cameco over the last 3 years was up something like 600 or 700%, ultimately going to an increase of 800% over that bull market. And then the juniors, though, if you look at them, they were lagging basically right up until the last year. I think returning something it was about 400% in 2006, and then they just went on an absolute tear in that last year or so. And by when the market top was reached in 2007, those companies, the juniors, the smaller cap names, had returned on average about 1,200%. And so if you look at where we're at today, it's kind of a similar thing playing out, where the smaller and mid caps to a certain extent have lagged the larger caps, more liquid names. That's understandable. But I think as this bull market matures, you're going to see the smaller and mid cap names outperform the larger cap names as money flows down into these companies that offer more leverage and torque, especially as you work your way towards the latter part of the bull market.
Well, that obviously makes sense to me as well. What I've also been thinking about is what happens then, like what happens once those stocks have run up. And you just told me that you don't necessarily have to raise capital. You can go through with the plans that you've announced with the money that you have and with the money that you have coming in terms of options. But I mean, not having to doesn't mean you're not gonna. So are you going to raise capital if the opportunity presents itself for like flow through or something else?
We have no need right now. As I said, like, we're fully funded right through this year with all of our drilling. Obviously, partners have to fund, their share, and in the option agreements, they have to fund all of it. So no plans right now. That could change, obviously, if the market really heats up. And if we decide we're, expanding our program, if we make a major new discovery, obviously, then we would be expanding our program. But all else equal right now, there's no need for us to go out and raise money. We're really cognizant of equity dilution. At the end of the day, for us, we're working towards some type of a corporate transaction. That would be the ideal situation, and hopefully we can pull the trigger on that. In the best uranium price environment we can. It's always hard to obviously pick bottoms and tops, but that is the end goal. And so we're very cognizant of dilution going forward. And yeah, there has been capital that's flowing into the sector, more generalist money coming in, but we'd like to see that going into the open market.